Malo lava, everyone, and all the fans of the Polynesianized podcast throughout the world. Welcome to this live digital cover session and episode that we have running here. I'm Mr. Aotearoa coming live from Aotearoa. I'm joining with Tualau. Tualau, how you doing, man?
Doing good. It is nice and toasty here in Las Vegas. At 9 o'clock in the morning, it was 100 degrees. So it's
Shoot.
nice and toasty. And, it's not too bad. It's not like when we were in Texas. It gets hot here, but the humidity, there's no real humidity. So
Mm.
really, and then I guess also because I'm usually in AC anyway. So, but it really doesn't get for me uncomfortable when I go about my normal day until it hits about like 111, 112. When it hits 111, 112, you're like, yeah, this is cooking me
It's
inside and
pretty hot.
outside.
That's good. That's good. Wait. How about when you get in the car? Is it pretty hot and stuff, or
It
do you
gets
have it
pretty
parked in the
hot.
shade? Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty hot. Fortunately at work, I park underground. So it's
okay.
not too bad. It's when I go out and about town. But it gets so hot that like when you go to stores, they usually have a pad on the handle to open the door because the handle of the door will get super hot. So
Okay.
they have that. So yeah, it gets toasty here.
Mm.
I think Death Valley, which is about an hour and a half from here, holds the record for the highest temperature ever recorded.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it gets nice and toasty over here. How about your neck of the woods? Still cold?
Cold, it's our cold winter. I have a little blocked nose, so just the normal cold weather
Just some sinus pressure?
illness. Yeah, sinus pressure because it's a little bit cold, but I always say this cold is not too bad compared to the snow. So if there's no snow on the ground, I think I'll take this kind of cold than actual snow on the ground in Utah that I'm used
Okay,
to. So
okay. We can, yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
not too bad. Not too bad though.
Awesome, awesome. Well, just some housekeeping items. As always, we appreciate all those who are willing to like, share,
Oh,
comment. It goes a very long way. And we really appreciate those who do that. And it gives us the opportunity to get more out there. I don't know about you, Mr. Ateroa, but I think the Polynesianized podcast is making a little dent in the Polynesian universe. I'm starting to
mm-hmm.
see a few more, social media posts, content creators who are talking more about the Tuitonga Empire, Tonga as the initial, you know, landing ground where Polynesia got its identity, and maybe, what are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing it too? Well, I'm going to add this wasn't part of what we were going to talk about, but I'm going to pull up a video that kind of explains, kind of goes over what I'm talking about. But what are
Yeah.
your thoughts, Masi? Are you seeing the same thing?
No, definitely seen a lot more people. You can tell that they have somewhat watched some of the content because now they have more information about the ancient kingly lines of the Tuitonga, can speak a little bit more into it. They also can understand the navigation of colonization of what Tonga actually did that was different from many of the other islands in much details that you didn't really hear before. You just heard that Tonga was the only monarchy in the Polynesian that's still today. But other than that, or being sovereign. Other than that, you don't really hear the details of what they did to reach to that outcome. So I'm hearing a lot more of that, and how. And another good thing is a win for Tonga being the only uncolonized is a win for all Polynesians or Polynesian nation.
Absolutely.
So that's another
Absolutely.
good thing that we're hearing because it is. We're all a Polynesian family. You know, we can always have our little jokes here and there. And when we talk about history, we can be a little bit um, over maybe explain it or maybe too much. Um, Maybe we could have used better terms and words, but at the end of the day, it's just getting the idea out there and just having that conversations to try to re understand and rediscover our true Polynesian history of where we come from.
No, 100%, 100%. And real quick before I forget, Talangi 8889, paying member of the
Lagi.
Polynesianized podcast. We always take time to recognize the paying members who contribute. He says, "What's up, brothers? What's our topic for today?" So, our topic for
Hmm.
today, and we'll get into it, is a little educational on the difference between colonization and a treaty of friendship and protection. You know, sometimes
Protectorate.
we see a
Yeah.
lot of people online saying, "Oh, Tonga's," it's a false claim to say Tonga never was colonized because you have your Independence Day, you celebrate. And I said, well, that's not necessarily the case. That's the Emancipation Day, right? That's
Yeah.
when the
Serfdom.
commoners,
Yeah.
yes, commoners received their freedom in the sense of having the opportunity to own private property. And
Mm.
it wasn't slavery. That's another little clarification that we make. But that's what we're gonna get to. But as usual, that's what makes a live digital kava session exciting. Sometimes just a spur of the moment, we're gonna pivot.
Yeah.
Like this one, we're gonna pivot to here real quick. And it is a content creator who's a Samoan content creator, um, who shares this. And he says, who were the first Pacifica people? And he's going to talk about Polynesians, how it started, and we'll just kind of see what he says.
Okay.
Let me know if you don't hear the sound, Mr. Ateroa.
Ancestors, Part 4. I know it's been a minute since I've covered this topic, but our story continues on from the discovery of Tonga and Samoa by the Lapita people around 3,000 years ago. Discovered around the same time, with initial settlement in Nukuleka on Tongatapu being the earliest known site. These islands became a hub for the evolving culture that would one day spread across the Pacific. Tongan settlements continued to make Lapita-style pottery with elaborate patterns that slowly turned into a more practical plainware style over the next 1,000 years and have sites documented all over their islands. Samoa, however, has Lapita-style pottery found at only one site in Mulifanua. There's many reasons and theories as to why these changes happened, whether it was geographic, economical, technological, new resources, maybe it was a mix of all of these things, we're not entirely sure. What we do know is that they were developing their own cultures over time and moved away from this Lapita style and became more familiar to what we recognize as Pacifica culture today. After the discovery and settlement of both Tonga and Samoan islands, there's a bit of time until the next new island is found. Niue. Around 800 years after the settling of Tonga and Samoa is the next time that we see archaeological evidence of a new settlement. These sites in Niue are some of the best examples we can look at for what early independent Pacifica settlements looked like. Due to the Niuean language being closely related to Tongan, it is believed that the first wave of settlers to the island were of Tongan origin. Though with some of the names of places and families closely resembling those in Samoa, this suggests that Niue was settled in multiple waves over the years by groups from both islands. With settlement sites and food production being limited in these early days, it is likely that the island was integrated into a single community system. So what did a settlement look like? Archaeological evidence in multiple sites shows that ancient settlements had large platforms made from both coral and dressed slabs consistent with nearby
Hmm,
Tongan traditions. They constructed
I didn't
stone
know
Mm.
walls,
that.
backfilled the area before finishing it with small paving slabs or kilikili. They also had large earthwork mounds and platforms that they used as settlement sites and frequented coastal caves for fishing and shellfish collection, with some suggesting that some of the caves were permanently lived in due to large deposits of fish bones and other midden. In terms of burial, they had many ways. Caves, both coastal and inland, used as burial sites, with the graves being obvious rather than hidden. Some burials were found in mounds and some found in small stone structures, with evidence of the reinterment of bones at many sites being present. It's unclear what the reasoning for the differences are. Technology-wise, they were still very similar to both Samoa and Tonga, with their uses of adzes, clubs, weaving, and hiapo, and only two known fishing implements have been discovered in Niue, a small shell lure and a one-piece turtle shell hook. In terms of voyaging, we can assume that they also used the outrigger canoe to travel, but why did it take 800 years to find this island? And how long was it until they found the next one? Well, that's the story.
Interesting.
Mm. Very interesting. Very interesting. First, initial thoughts about the explanation here from this gentleman. very good. I mean, he's using the pottery as the kind of starting point, right? Which is in Tonga, and then to Samoa, and then Samoa. Interesting, he went straight to Niue. That caught me a little surprised. I was thinking maybe it would have gone to Tahiti after, but you know, just based on the findings of the pottery and stuff, and the mounts and stuff, learned a little bit about Niue, and I'm sure there's quite a few like you touched on it, Tua, with Tokelau having some significant, the smaller islands of the Polynesian nation that we do not probably know too much, including Niue and Tokelau. I'm sure there's some other ones that probably have some hidden jewels just regarding certain histories connecting to the bigger islands or the bigger influence in the Polynesian nation per se, with Samoa, Tonga, and like Tahiti and Hawaii and Aotearoa. But very interesting. Those are my takes there.
Yeah, real quick, Mel, paid
Hey,
member
what's
of the
up, Melvin?
Polynesian Eyes podcast. Appreciate it, Mel. She says,
Melvin,
Malo Tua and Mr. Atearoa. Aloha, Mel. Hope all is well in your neck of the woods.
hello, Mel. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to me. People are at least like, once again, it's not that he is, he may think Samoa is the capital and the center. Everyone has their own opinions, right? But at least I appreciate that he at least said, "Hey, the earliest settlements that we found are in Nukuleka." Like,
Yeah.
as we stand right now, that is indisputable. That's the oldest settlement that we found. We obviously think that David Burley has a strong case. He brings the archaeological, he brings the DNA, right? He brings the agricultural technology. He also brings some of the boats and that technology that seems to make sense. And I think that's a very strong position. But I just thought it was cool that at least people are recognizing the data and not just jumping to the old school conclusions of in the past.
Yes, yes. Well, they're just jumping off the stories of oral histories that hasn't been, let's just say, vetted or challenged. Because I think it's always good to always let people's ideas and don't take it personally when people challenge your oral histories that's been
Hmm.
told to you by your grandfather or grandmother that hasn't been challenged, and that's where the emotional uh, debates that people have that they won't let go and look for further evidence
Yeah,
regarding our history.
no, and it's really important that like some people take this position that if you have oral history, it's either all wrong or all right. And some oral histories can have some things right and some things wrong. Like, here's a prime example, right? We were trying to understand, geez, how did the Tui Manua get to the point that some people believe that Tui Manua had this empire, had all this stuff, and you're like, man, geez, there's no evidence for it. And then we go and talk with Xiao Si Ilayu, and he goes, hey, in Manua, they have an oral history there that Kaulfonua Fekai's mother was a Tu'imanua Fefine, and that when he moved the residence to Ha'amoa, he also took on the Tu'imanua title.
Yeah,
Then you can kind of, then I said, okay, then so there is a possibility that the Tu'imanua was over an empire, but it wasn't because of the Tu'imanua. It's just that the Tu'imanua also was the Tu'itonga. And with those titles together, that is when you can kind of take a position that that's kind of accurate. So interesting, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But that's
yeah,
at least some ways that you can explain some of these things. Because if we don't have that one little oral history, we have no other option but to write off the Tui Manua and say, hey, you're only 500-600 years old. How can you have an empire? How can you be the starting point?
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
No, no, and just to add on to that, and the awesome thing about this platform, that what it's doing and just having the discussion of our history, because the further we discuss, the closer you are to the truth. our viewers have been very proactive just with the word tui. Remember the word tui? It was one of our
Mm,
viewers that actually went and got the oldest Samoan dictionary. I think it was Bratz is the name. He
Pratt.
goes
Yeah.
it yes, Brat uh was able to recover and in his time in Samoa was able to collect and create the Samoan dictionary, and then he puts in parentheses that from his gathering of notes that the word tui is of Tongan origin. So you can put it all together why the tui manua, tui manua, tuia ana that's in Upolu, the tuia tua that's in Upolu too, um, and the Manua title, Tui Manua, can all be related to Tatu Itonga in some close family relationship. So, you know, this is all part of the of us working all together and discussing and sharing each other's findings and throwing it in the pot and see what you get out of it. But like that's an example that we didn't go look for it. Tua. That was one of the
Yeah.
viewers that tagged you on the TikTok and say, "This is what I found when we were having the discussion with our friend story of Bo with the languages." And long and behold, I've always thought about it being weird. It's like I'm pretty sure tui is a Tongan word, but I didn't go and look for anything, and then voila, a viewer found it for us and says, tui is a Tongan origin according to this Palangi guy Brett in early Samoa. I think in what the 1800s something
1800s. Lived in
eighteen
Samoa for
hundreds
like 40 years. And it's considered probably the most respected and most detailed Samoan dictionary.
comprehensive
Yes.
Samoan words that not lot of them are used today. That he was able
Hey,
to collect.
Masi, I didn't know we have Spanish in Polynesia.
Oh, Dua, maybe you're our Espanol in the
Yeah.
Polynesianized podcast. So what
So
is that one?
Sylvia,
What is that one?
Silvia says, ¿por qué solo es hablar? Y Silvia, lo que vamos a decir es, no sabemos una isla en Polinesia que habla español. And
Oh yeah,
so,
muy bien,
yeah,
muy bien.
muy bien. Muchas gracias, como dicen.
Muchas
Pero
gracias.
bienvenidos al Polynesianized Podcast, Silvia. Aquí hablamos en inglés. ¿Ok?
Yes. Um,
Ah,
uh, Pretty soon eat some porito. Porito.
ah,
That's the closest
tamporito.
Spanish I can get. That's the closest Spanish Espanol I can get to.
Yeah, and for those who are joining in, we're gonna talk about the protectorate versus colonization and why Tonga brings a unique perspective. Um, and this is just where I want to remind everyone because Mussy, I don't know if you've been looking on our social media. There is
It's
a real
active.
part. There's a
It's super active,
It's super
especially the
active.
Facebook.
The Facebook, and I would almost dare there's more Samoans commenting on our stuff than Tongans.
Yeah,
It's kind of interesting to me because we don't go out of our way. When we started this, we talked about Tongan history and we presented Tongan history, and it was our Samoan brothers and sisters who came out of their way, to educate us and said Tui is a Samoan word. The empire in Polynesia came from the Tu'imanua. The Tu'itonga is descendant from Tu'imanua, and the Tu'ikanukupolu, that's a Samoan system and everything. It's like, and every time they brought quote unquote evidence, all we did was, okay, we'll take your evidence seriously, and we would sit down and we walk through each of the quote unquote evidence. And not only did we find the evidence doesn't support Tu'imanua or Samoa, but every time we dug in, it actually pointed to Tonga even more.
yeah, yeah.
And what's funny is we get the accusation many times online. You guys only want to talk about Samoa. And I try to tell them, well, unfortunately, only our brothers and sisters from Samoa are coming over here attacking us and trying to
Mm.
correct us. But it is kind of funny to kind of see that like I don't know. It seems like we're a favorite target of our brothers and sisters in Samoa. I don't know if that's what you're seeing, but that's what I'm kind of seeing a little bit too.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of it is just grandma and grandpa's oral history, and they're gonna defend it with their life, kind of thing. So, hey, it is what it is. If you're not open for the discussion, then I guess just let it be and enjoy life. Well, we're gonna keep moving on.
Yes. Like here's a common one, right? If Tonga was first, why most island languages is under the Samoic language? That was one of the evidences that was sent to us. Remember? It was like
Mm,
Samoana and all these people on TikTok.
correct.
They tagged us, and then we go and pull up the study that broke down the Polynesian family of the languages. And what do we find out? The grouping is not off of origin. The grouping is of which language changed the least, which languages changed the
Change
most.
the most.
And all the Samoic languages are the languages that changed the most. And the study said that Tongan is closer to the Proto Polynesian language than the other languages.
Yeah.
But see, people just say, oh, a lot of the languages in Polynesia are Samoic. That means it comes from Samoa. Go look at the study, people. Go look at the study. That's not what the study says, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty funny. Um, Here's another interesting comment. I don't know how to say that name. Says, "Are you Spanish?" And no, we're not Spanish, but on this podcast, we can facilitate Spanish questions, Spanish conversations. And Mr. Atearoa, you wanna, I see a handful of our Samoan brothers and sisters in the comments. Why don't you give a proper welcome and hello to our brothers and sisters in Samoan?
Yes, yep, talofa tu le au Samoa o lo mata mai nei polo kalame ya ua talia manuia o tou ya a fai ai se fesili ya fesili mai o le talia ina le na fesili faafetai mo le awanoa ma le ongosai. So we can also take Samoan questions just along with Spanish questions to allow. Very happy
Malo.
to assist all viewers. We're very inclusive like that.
Yes,
We're very
yes.
inclusive. Espanol or Samoa questions. We're very inclusive like that.
we can we can facilitate
Yeah.
discussions there. So with that being said, one of the maybe we should thank our brothers and sisters of Samoa. We should thank them because a lot of our content really is driven by answering their their evidence, their concerns, their questions,
Yep.
and including tonight, like and this is also from our brothers and sisters from East Polynesia as well. Like there's a handful of very regular commentators on our social media that like we usually say, hey, Tonga brings a unique perspective because we were never colonized, and that
Mm,
brings certain advantages. And we're always accused of no, you didn't bring anything. You guys were colonized and you actually lost your history. And maybe I'll bring out the specific comments on that.
mm.
Um, but what are your thoughts on that, Masi? But real quick, read this comment from Mel, our paying member, and then what are your thoughts on Mel's comment and also on the topic of Polynesia?
Discussion. Discussion. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you for the comment, Mel. The question is interesting though. The Tui Tokelau is an idol. Okay. All right. That's
Hmm.
very interesting, Mel. So the there is a word called tui tokelau, but you're saying it was never a real person. Is that what I'm assuming? It was just like I'm just saying like I'm thinking was it like one of those tiki stuff that like an idol ancestor worship kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So yeah, that could be. I mean, maybe if you could clarify that a little bit more, Mel, and
Mm,
give us more context on that. But that's interesting. That Tuitokalao is actually an idol.
mm,
But yeah,
very
and
interesting.
anything else, Mr. Ateroa?
I guess for tokelau context, also Mel. is tui just a word for, reference to like a title per se, like the other tui titles, or is if just Tokelau still maintaining that same definition as the Samoans, which is a little mix with the tui, like because they go usually use like tui is like tuki, like in Tongan in that reference, you
Mm.
know. So yeah, no, and just touching on the other reference to with our Ha'amoa community always interacting, which is very good because it just allows discussion and exposure of the platform. But yeah, very especially Facebook. Like I feel like that thing is always going with the amount of discussion, and not only that, our uh, our followers. I know some of them are Tongan, but some of them are non-Tongan that always go on and we don't have to reply to every comment, but I see a lot of our followers who do follow the Polynesian Eyes podcast kind of go in and answer our fellow people who are curious and let's just say have so many questions about the history, and a lot of them go in and answer them. So that's what I found very interesting and very interactive of the especially the
Hey,
Facebook. Very
yeah.
ongoing.
This brother or sister of ours is very active, but read this, Masi, and what are your thoughts on that? Well, I'm still trying to
All
find
right.
the comment here.
No, go for it. Go for it. Jess Mania, your Tongan aren't commenting because they don't agree with you. Okay, interesting. Samoans are commenting because you were discrediting the Tuimanua Empire. Your evidence is exaggerated. No archaeologists have said Tonga only origin. Even was it Kirk
Kirk or
or
whatever. Yeah.
Kirk didn't say that. Well, thank you, Jess. I believe you commented this from the Facebook, which is very active on the Polynesian Eyes page and Tevita Fales. Well, I know there's been a few Tongans that actually commented, but a lot of them are. It's little like it's not really discussing history. It's more of like they think we don't know or what we say is incorrect, and we reply back and it just ends there. It's not like ongoing. And I here's another reason just for you. The reason why many Tongans are probably not commenting is one, they're probably still trying to understand our history, and two is they probably agree with us and we are telling the truth and they leave it as that. So we're just sharing the message on their behalf. That's kind of where I'm coming from, Jess. So it's not because the Tongan community don't agree. It's they they don't know because they're not from Mua, and even sometimes the Mua people are still, especially the ones who probably lived overseas a while and is probably not still trying to understand our ancient past, still trying to figure it out. And two, a lot of the Tongans from Tonga are, history that they've heard before, and we've just kind of revived it, and they're agreeing with it, and that's why they don't push back. That's my opinion there. Tua, anything?
Yeah. My thoughts are number one, see, this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about, right? Number one, we get a lot of messages, we get a lot of feedback. It's just the Tongans are not as hypersensitive of talking about these
Mhm.
things, right? Like
That's
this is
probably the truth. Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
they're
not
not very
something that
sensitive.
like you can talk about it and some of them will just laugh and move on.
Yeah,
Some of them
yeah.
are like, "Oh, that's interesting." Plus, they don't need to speak because we're swatting all of these things. Like here's an example. No archaeologists have said Tonga only origin. I hate to break it to you, but there's an archaeologist who spent 40 years. He wrote a book, and the book literally says Tonga, the origin of Polynesia. And not only that, we had him on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
We had him on this podcast and we talked to him. And we'll probably circle back with him in the future. So, once again, they say, oh, even Kurt says, didn't say that. Kurt says, he says it's either Tonga or Samoa. He says it's one of those two, but he kind of says it's very close. Uh, David Burley says, I found the evidence, DNA evidence. I found the agricultural evidence. I found the uranium thorium dating evidence. He even said the Lapita, like that map that the brother did. You see how many Lapita sites were all over Tongatapu and they only have one in Samoa, right? Like the evidence is overwhelming. And here's the other thing. We have been asking someone from Samoa, anyone under the sun who has evidence that they say, hey, Tua and Masi, you really need to consider this. This
Yeah.
is what you need to understand in order to really rethink your position on the Tuimanua and Samoa as the origin and as the center of the capital.
Or the birthplace
All
of our
yeah,
Polynesian heritage.
yeah.
Nothing like that. Yeah.
Because as much as people don't like it, we have Samoan, we have Fijian, and we have Tongan. So for us, it's a win-win, right? And it's
We just want
interesting.
the truth. That's all it is. And the
Yeah,
truth is just pointing to Tongatapu. That's all it is. If it
and
was
here's
to Savai or Upolu, yeah.
yeah, and here's a couple jewels or future episodes that we're going to talk about, because we even have to correct some of our brothers and sisters in Fiji and Samoa, because we've had this idea of Samoans say Samoa has the pure Polynesian blood. In Tonga, you guys have mixed too much with the Fijians, and that's where what Tongans are. Tongans are the mixture of Samoans and Fijians, and that's how we have Tongans. Then we also have our Fijian brothers and sisters who say, hey, Tonga, you're welcome. You come from Fiji. You guys are Fijians, right?
Eh,
And what they're going to be sadly disappointed when we talk about the DNA evidence. David Burley, from the bones he found in Talasiu, zero Melanesian
yeah,
markers,
yeah,
right? Which he said that the traditional model is the Polynesians, Austronesians came and spent a lot of time in Melanesia, and then they
yeah.
came
Then they
into
migrated to
Polynesia.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then Burley is like, so how is it that we're finding
Zero.
bones that have
Yeah,
zero Melanesian DNA markers in Tonga thousands of years ago? So that's another interesting thing. Another interesting thing that I have it saved, and we'll have a podcast here in the near future, and then we'll get into our topic. Is there are oral histories in Fiji of stories of when, because they have oral history that when the first Fijians came to Fiji, they were all in one settlement.
uh,
And guess who they mention in their oral history in that settlement?
Tonga.
The Tuitonga.
Mm,
and
yeah,
and it's a story about three Fijians who go to Tonga to do a competition. They do well for the Tuitonga. And people are gonna say that, like, gosh, the people joke online, Masi, geez, pretty much the Tongans are the ones who discovered the moon, right? Because they're joking because of
yeah.
all of the evidence we bring to the table. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but there's a real chance that the Tuitonga is the origin of Fiji water. And let me tell you why. So, and we'll watch the video. These are documentaries that Fijians did, and they went to these villages and interviewed the elders in those villages, right? These are the stories that the academics don't want to talk about. Just like the Pule Malay and the Patonga and the Tuitonga living on the Pule Malay, the academics just want to ignore the oral history. They only want the oral history that gives them the freedom to write history the
Yeah.
way they like it. But according to some of the elders there were three guys who went, and three of them got gifts. One
Uh-huh.
guy was gifted a certain area. He was gifted soil. And that
Uh-huh.
guy brought it back to Fiji. And that place, that part of Fiji where that guy went to, has like super rich soil, grows great things there, right?
Uh, uh,
The other guy was gifted a freshwater lake. That's the same fresh water that the Fiji water comes
Fiji
from.
water. That's the famous throughout the world. Yeah.
Yes. So once again, you guys can say that Tuitonga discovered the moon. No, we didn't discover the moon. We discovered the Fiji water for the Fijians. You can
Mm.
add that to your accusations. And then this is the interesting one. The third guy was given a rooster. And
Mm.
you know what this rooster could do? This rooster can tell the seasons. It can tell when the tides come in and out,
Mm.
right? And in Tongan oral history, that was one of the tools that many people say of, like Ha'amoa. It was a great navigator of the Moa clan that was sent to Samoa to settle in Manua. But one of his tools, one of his many tools as a navigator, was a rooster. Now, how hilarious is that? That
Mm.
there's a rooster given to Fiji, and there's a rooster given to the Tu'imanua, and it's about telling the seasons, navigating, and using the tides coming in and out. And it was the killing of that rooster that led to a like a dispute that
Yeah.
caused more people to spread out, right? Hey, this is an interesting observation, Masi. He says this is sounding more and more like Moana, the rooster. Yeah, yeah, no, how hilarious would that be? But I mean, I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting. What are your thoughts
That is
about that, Masi?
interesting.
And then we'll jump into the slide deck.
No, no. I mean, because we talked about it with the Manua flag having the chicken. Kind of indicating its kind of origin of the Moa. The importance of the Moa. So that no, I just had questions from what you were saying to us. So the rooster was killed, and it caused chaos, and people further migrated to like chaos. Is that like is it killing the person that was in charge of watching the Moa, or was it just killing the
the
rooster?
The oral
At,
history was, I can't remember. So the twins, there were these twins, these Fijian twins, and in
uh,
their village they had the rooster. Then another guy from a different part of the village, he came and stole the rooster and
uh,
took it. Then the guys who originally had the rooster, they said, "Hey, since they took the rooster and we can't have it, we're going to kill it." And so they killed the rooster. And then that led into a dispute, I believe.
uh,
And then from there, now mofere all over from Fiji. But the oral history says that this is where one of the first, if not the first, Fijian settlement was in that area.
very fascinating, fascinating. So, where is the oldest Fijian settlement, Tua? Do you know?
It's
Like,
like
cause I'm,
it's in Viti Levu, somewhere in the inland.
uh, no, interesting. No, I'm just interested because I wonder when they get, well, when they got those gifts from the Tuitonga, was that like the black that was already kind of mixing with the Polynesians, or was this just the black people coming?
That's a great question,
That's my,
because
yeah, yeah, got
because
me
the, the
thinking
the
there.
the oral history, according to the Fijians in this village, there was a competition going on Tongatapu. There was a competition going on Tongatapu, and it was the Tongans competing with someone else who was visiting, and it was like to the death. Like if the visitors won, they killed one of the chiefs. If the
Mm,
Tongan team was to win, they killed the other guys. And what happened was the Tuitongas guys were losing, and they had lost two times in a row. So the Tuitonga sent a proclamation to Fiji and said if there's any warriors in Fiji that would come to Tonga and help
represent, yeah,
represent the
represent me.
Tuitonga. Yes.
Eh.
And then those three guys, those three individuals came from Fiji, and they ended up winning for the
Ah,
Tuitonga. And then because they did that great thing to win for the Tuitonga gave them those gifts. But this is the hilarious thing.
Ah,
Why is the Tuitonga giving the gift of a lake that's in Fiji?
ah.
Unless he owns that lake and he owns that,
He owns the island. No, that's fascinating. That is
because you have to
fascinating.
ask that question.
Yeah, that
Like,
is
how
fascinating.
how is it a gift to you? How is the Tuitonga able to give a gift in
If
Fiji?
it's not
And he
his, if
says,
it's
if
not
it's not
his.
his.
Mm,
Isn't that interesting? I mean, those are
yeah,
fascinating questions.
yeah. Well, and then declare, like, give a declaration of, like, an announcement of who in this part of the island is willing to come and join
Yeah,
this tournament, pretty much to the death, and represent me. So obviously the Tuitonga has a strong influence back in the before, in the ancient times, even in
yeah,
Fiji. I've always understood as Fiji kind of being a little chaotic and unorganized for a while, and sending Tongans who want violence and stuff there and stuff. But it seems like it makes me kind of reconstruct my thinking that Fiji was very, very still close, dear part of the Tuitonga influence, even back
yeah.
since the beginning. Even
No,
if,
100%.
yeah. So I don't know. That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, Tua. That's very insightful.
No, see, and that remember, Mussy, we watched that other documentary of the
Yes.
Tongans in Fiji. Because remember, we always like, oh, we know the Lao group, we know some
Yes.
parts that Maafu went to. But then we watched this one guy, and he's like, no, the Tongans went all the way up the river in
Yeah.
Vanuatu. And then we look at Takombao, and he doesn't look 100% Melanesian. He looks like he has Tongan
Yeah.
blood in him. And maybe
No.
that's why he wanted to talk with Tupou the first, because he says,
Yes.
hey, we're distant relatives.
Relatives. No, and I was gonna say, see, that's the time period I think of Fiji, right? That's the time period. But like that story, when you're saying the kind of how Fiji kind of started, it goes even further because I haven't heard stories that go that further. Because we're talking about
Thousands of
Tangaloa, this
years.
Tangaloa transitioning the power to the Tuitonga, and looks like the Tui. This is like during the early parts of the Tuitonga, still trying to find its foot and how it's gonna project power. And obviously looks like Fiji was still under the realm of its influence. So, like, that's very interesting because I've always held the Fiji history with Tonga kind of in that time period, to like we mentioned with that documentary that we kind of gave our thoughts on. That's the time period I always kind of thought of Fiji. And then anything before that was like, oh, the Tongans would go there and just kind of do
Mm,
whatever, or get resources for trees to build canoes. But hey, seems like they were a lot closer than I thought with that story you shared.
yeah.
So fascinating.
No, no, it is. And so that's on the docket here. We'll walk through there. I found two separate documentaries that mention it. One is from one village's perspective, and then the other one is from they interview a different village and a different group of people. And it's gonna be fascinating. And it's in the interior of the main island of Fiji, so Vanuatu. So
Okay.
that's an interesting thing right there. So
Very, very.
okay, all right. Well, I think we didn't think we were going to talk about these things, but looking at the time, we're at 45 minutes. This will be a entire episode on its own when we release it on the official podcast playlist and all the other ones, because this is what makes the live digital kava sessions fun. You never
Yeah.
know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
All right. Pivoting now, we're going to go to one of the things that we get told a lot is Tonga was colonized. Tonga was terrible. It lost its culture. I couldn't find the lady's comments, but she's
Uh
like,
huh.
Tonga's history is only from the Palangis textbook, and that's why you guys rely on Samoa for your tattoos and your history, because we maintained it. Um, we maintained our history through our chants, and you guys don't know your history. And and then I told her, I was like, how are you going to tell us we don't know our history when we maintained our independence the whole time?
Mm.
And she guys, you guys were a protectorate. You guys lost your independence. You guys were colonized. So I said, you know what?
Let's
Let's
do an
have
episode.
let's do an episode. As always, we thank her. Her her name was Moana Sao Sao, and
Okay.
we nicknamed her Meow Sao Sao. Meow Sao Sao after multiple discussions with her. But I couldn't find the exact stuff online, but we'll jump into it. So that's what
Okay.
we're gonna talk through today. We're gonna talk through educational for all of us. I learned a few things too through this. And if anyone has any comments, they can educate us as well. This is a live digital kava session, and we
Yeah.
learn from each other. You want to read the first one,
Yeah.
Masi, and I'll do the
Y-
colony.
yes, sir. Clear definitions. Protectorate by treaty. A state keeps most internal self government but hands foreign affairs and defense to a stronger power in exchange for protection. It remains a separate legal entity. Colony. A territory under the full or near full control of a foreign power. The colonizing country usually controls both external and internal affairs, land, and resources. Simple analogy. Protectorate, Big Brother handles the neighborhood bullies and foreign dealings, but you still run your own household. Colony, Big Brother moves in, changes the locks, and runs everything. That's pretty clear with the clear
Yes.
definitions.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts are number one, you have to understand the protectorate is a treaty when it's by treaty,
Yes.
right?
Two
It's and
parties, two
two
sovereign
parties.
countries shaking hand and discussing the policy on how it's going to be agreed upon.
Yeah. And we're going to see here, this is actually a very desired treaty or relationship, right? Like we're going to learn here, there were multiple Polynesian nations, Pacific nations, who were hoping to have protectorate status, right? And they were asking to have this treaty, but were denied. And those who were into this treaty, all of them got colonized except for one. And we'll talk through that too. And then once again, I love the simple analogy, right? Protectorate, you got bullies in the neighborhood, you get some muscle, the big brother, take care of the bullies, let me take care of my own house, right?
Yeah.
Let me worry about my culture, what I want to keep, what I don't want to keep, how I want to handle my internal affairs, how I, if I want to adopt Christianity or what practices that we want to ban or whatever, but it's totally a self-governed sovereign decision of that nation. On the
Mm,
other hand, when you look at colony, that's very different. Big brother moves in, he changes the locks, means he decides who comes in, who comes out. He says and runs everything. He tells you what to believe, he tells you when to believe it, and he tells you how to behave and when to behave. But I don't know anything to add much. I think this
yeah.
a very simple understanding here.
uh, yeah. No, I was thinking of another analogy. So a pet, a protectorate analogy to me is if I got beef with my neighborhood or neighbors, I'll go hire a hitman to take care of them while I can stay home and take care of the daily duties of the family, making sure that the kids and everybody go to school, and the wife is all good, the grandparents are having food and getting their morning tea,
Comfortable.
right? Yes, comfortable. What happens with the colony is I have to go fight the external fight. So I'm out and about, leaving the home base to go and take care of some errands with beef that I have with my neighborhood, while the whole inside of the family is chaotic when you have the kids not coming back from whatever they're supposed to do from practice or school, and the wife is doing whatever, and the grandparents haven't been been eating their food because no one is taking care of them, and it caused chaotic, and then you allow your other neighbors to come in and run your household. That's what I'm seeing with the. That's my analogy of the protectorate and the colony definition in my
Yeah.
personal view.
No, 100% Masi. And wasn't you who was telling me that you spoke to some people in Samoa that like you would have to change your name just to get certain products or access? Like kind of give some context
Yes.
like that. Like this is when you get colonized, this is not a small little, oh, we kept our chant and our culture and everything. No, like it tells you what language you can speak, what name, but
Yep.
kind of share what you've heard from people who are familiar with what it was like when Samoa was under a colony of a foreign
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, no, and many of our Samoan viewers that have grandparents that are in their 80s and 90s, you ask them if they live, especially if they grew up in Samoa in those times, and especially if they were full Samoan and not mixed. If you were mixed, you had a good
Ah,
life because you could go to school and you can exchange and buy goods. If you were a full Samoan in that time, you were restricted to certain goods. You couldn't get like certain goods because you were full Samoan, and two, you couldn't go to school because
mm,
you were full Samoan. So that's how bad it was during the German and the British of running your country, and that was that's not like uh, a thing that only happened in Samoa, but it happened throughout every country that gets conquered by a foreign power. They establish the rules, and you abide by them, or you get killed, or you move, or you find a way to leave. So, or another thing is you go and breed and you create hafakashis, or you know what I mean? Like that's kind of right. That's kind of how people dealt with the colonial powers of that time. To
mm,
It's either you kind of join the family and to try to get a better life for your families, or some of them, and that's what thing I think that's part of the reason why the was it decentralized power works for those things, because you can kind of certain villages can kind of just rely on each other and kind of survive the timeline of the colonial power, and maybe not be as affected than others. And then you get places like Pia or close to town that a lot of them a
just
lot of them
totally
found
dominated.
spouses. A lot of them gave their family members to kind of marry colonial power so they can have a better life, unfortunately, if they liked it or not, because they were oppressed or they
Yeah.
wanted to get certain access. So yeah,
So
that's my thoughts there.
I have a question, Masi. Is that why the second to last to Imanua was what, Charlotte Young or something
Pro-
like that?
Probably. I mean, I'm just saying, like, right? That's part of the whole getting colonized. I'm just trying to let just share what people were. That's how bad it is when. I mean, we speak it like it's easy and stuff, but when you're oppressed and stuff, and that you can't fight them. That's one thing.
Mhm.
You can't abandon your home that all you've known is your village, or the home you or the island you kind of grew up on your entire life. So what's the third option? You tell one of your kids or whatever, here, go with a sailor here or whatever, or the soldier here of the colonial power. You create a family, and you get better access to certain goods because now you're kind of part of the colonial family. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's the same. What did the Tuitonga, right? People get married to the Tuitonga because the closer you can get access to them, you probably
Yeah,
get
that's the
better.
power and influence.
That's the part you get the knowledge of, maybe better access to knowledge of navigating more of the Polynesian nation. Two, you probably get military backup from the probably the biggest family tribe in all of Polynesia, the Tuitonga. And three, you probably get better access to food and soil if you were a hurricane was going to hit you. I mean, that's what I'm trying to share. It's the same, but it's the reason why the central power of Tongatapu was able to survive. We knew what the Palangis were doing because That's what the Tuitonga were doing many, many years ago.
Is that
You know
why?
what I mean?
Is that why the Tuitonga asked Captain Cook, and Captain Cook's like, "How come this is the only guy asking us what we're doing here?"
Yeah, exactly.
Because of what you're
Exactly.
saying, right? They're like,
Yes.
you don't spend time, money, resources to go out into they understand how difficult it is to navigate and to be out. You don't do that just for recreation,
Yes.
right? You're
Yeah.
doing that for a purpose. You're seeking resources. You're seeking military might, economic might. There's a reason why you're out there. You're not just out there out of the kindness of your heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Key differences. I'll read this one out. Key differences: sovereignty, protectorate keeps internal control. Colony, largely you lose internal control.
Mm.
Governance, protectorate, local rulers, government continue at times with oversight. Colony, foreign administration dominates. You are not determining who your leaders are. You are not determining what the rules and the laws are. Very different
Mhm.
from when you have local rulers. Land and resources, protectorate, local systems are often preserved. Colony, frequent land alienation and extraction, right? You're taking over.
Mm.
You are one piece of the empire, and your job is to provide resources. And if your only resource is land, that will be taken from you.
Mm.
Culture and identity, protectorate, indigenous structures more likely to survive. Colony, heavy pressure and change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough, like you were mentioning, Masi. It's a tough place to maintain your culture during colonization. It's almost impossible. How it ends, protectorate can lead to restored foreign affairs control. Colony, often long-term incorporation until decolonization. So
Mhm.
really, when you become a colony, your only chance is when decolonization happens, and you're at the mercy of the Western power. Decolonization, if the West did not choose to allow decolonization would never happen, right? You're at the mercy of the West. But any thoughts to
Yeah.
add to this one?
Um. No. No. I think the big one that kind of stood out, which that Tonga was really looking because of and I've heard other kind of the historians and people just online just trying to wanting to understand how Tonga navigated the colonization process, that land and resources, because you are without land, you are nothing, and that's not only a Polynesian thing, that is a white,
Mm.
Asian, that is a huge, that's all races. That
Human
if you have
beings
no
do that.
land, human being, you have no land, you're nothing, and because of that, let's just say what I'm pretty sure it was a tour of Tupola first to Australia and New Zealand and seeing the people in a, let's just say,
In
degrading
Australia. In
state in
Australia.
Australia. In Australia, in a degrading state because they had no land. I think that was a big emphasis on Tonga focusing and making sure when they did this protectorate state that the land would always stay with Tongans, because then you have value. You have no value as a human being without land, unfortunately,
And here's the important
in
thing,
this world.
Masi.
Yeah.
No, 100%, because you bring up a good point. Land control means identity control, right?
Mm,
And I really learned this from something you said, Masi, and it's always stuck out to me. This is why democracies are dangerous for indigenous people,
mm,
right? I think to me
mm.
that's a very strong um, argument against like pure democracies for indigenous people, because a democracy means everyone will be treated equal.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, just look at Fiji. It's happening all over. Now when you have a non-indigenous person comes and it's a pure democracy, then the foreigner's vote is just as good as the indigenous vote, and land control usually is what determines who has the power. Once you become democratic, then anyone can own the land. And once anyone can own the land, then the indigenous identity is at risk
Lost.
of being lost.
Yes. No, and no, and just to add on, let's just say this: the country that has the most democracy principles and policies embedded in their country, and if you're an indigenous person, that's going to be less towards your power and your say and your control of how to run your country. That's what
Yeah,
I'm trying to say. So I mean, and that's what, America is different because it runs on the idea. It's all of ideas, right? And that's different in a sense, but like, when you talk about countries of your ancestors that's been there for a while, I always say, man, democracy, it ain't treating no indigenous people the greater value than somebody from foreign that just came there 2 years ago, has the same rights than your ancestors that's been there thousands of years. And that's dangerous, very dangerous. So that's why, up all governments, especially in Polynesia, Tonga, especially with they're kind of experimenting, trying to go a little bit embedding. But every time you embed democracy principles here and there, it's good. But just remember, there's got to be a line, because every time you keep doing it, it can be a roller coaster. And then next thing you find out is your 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 value of your ancestors that's been there for many years is just as good as somebody
lost.
who just came off the plane, that has more
Yeah.
money, that has the same influence as you do, that you've been there your whole life. So that's,
No,
yeah.
I think
So
I think that's
yeah,
a very powerful, especially talking to know all of our brothers and sisters and family in Tonga, because Tonga is a very unique case, right? And remember, we're not saying democracy is bad. What we're saying
yeah,
is build a government that works for your group and your people. And if democracy, you say democracy works for you, great. But in Tonga's case, because we've always maintained our independence, because we've had self governance and land ownership for thousands and thousands of years, democracy does not, unless you're willing to let go of all of that, democracy is kind of a dangerous place to be
yeah.
to maintain that identity. You can
If
take pieces of the democracy and figure out how to implement it, but you have to maintain a certain level of control for the indigenous people, which is tied to the land, which is also tied to a not fully, not a purely democratic system. Because once you do that, I think that's something that I've always kind of like, you know what? I think Mr. Aotearoa has a good point on that, and I never thought
Yeah.
about that.
So, because here's my thoughts to it. This is why I came with it, because I feel like democracy gives you the best materials that the world can offer you. And if you want material things, democracy is fine. But if you become too materialistic, you can lose yourself on where you come from. You can lose yourself where what is actually more important spiritually. Because there's a lot of spiritual, because people can indulge and get carried away, and that's fine. And democracy give you that. But is it fine when you have other people that your family's been buried at, and they treat it like a hotel and a golf course? Is that really more important? You sold it off, for
Mm,
that, just for people to do whatever they want on your, like, those are the things that we've got to be careful. But in democracy, it's very transactional, and our society is a very transactional society. And sometimes you can, get caught up in that. But if you treat everything as transactional, your family land and everything that you think you value is a transactional, as somebody who wants to buy it for a right price.
yeah, who just showed up yesterday
Yeah,
and can just take over land and resources that's been in your family for 1,000 years.
yeah, yeah.
But
That's
that's
that's my thoughts.
democracy. But that's
Yes.
democracy. That's how it works. You can't complain. Once
Yeah.
you pick democracy, you have to understand what you're agreeing to. Hey,
Yeah.
Masi, I have a comment I want to read for you because I'm seeing it very common. It says, Jess, I was thinking that too because it has nothing to do with other Polynesian as a whole. It's only promoting Tonga for Tonga with the ideology of how come to be by putting down other Polynesian islands to fit their narrative and misleading information. If you think about there wasn't a Tonga without other Pacific islands in the Pacific, at the end, Tongans are just like the rest of us. One island country, like the rest of island country that make up the Pacific. He makes Tonga so great. Masi, why are you so anti everyone else and so pro Tonga?
Why am I projecting misinformation? OMG. Dang,
Where do
that's
you
not my
start?
intention. Dara Leota, that's not my intention. But hey, it's not trying to put other islands down here and there. Like people and that's the thing. I think you and I do understand we're just gonna speak what we comes to our minds and what we think is the truth. And if you we can't control what people perceive, so it is what it is. Leota, we're not just trying to, we're just telling it how it is. And we've always kind of maintained the idea, when Tonga does well, Samoa does well, Fiji does well. When Fiji does well, Tonga does, like, we're all in the same boat here. But to understand the origin, unfortunately, Tonga is the only one that was never colonized, and the Tui Tonga's residents was in Tonga Tapu, and because of that, there's a lot of history that needs to be shared. It doesn't make other islands less of that and this. It's just, it is what it is of our history. I mean, just like any other history, everyone has a different um, take on it, and this is just our take. And take it what it is and what you find valuable to yourself, and it is what it is. That's just my thoughts there, unless you had anything else, Tua.
Um, I think I do have some comments on that. First off, first off, uh, uh, is it Dara or Dara Leota? Um, how come? How come when? Let me do this. Let me see if I can find the video. I think there's a bit. How come it's only when Tonga? Let me bring this up. Let me share this video. Let's bring this up here.
Are you trying to say when Tonga shares its history that it seems like it's putting down all the other islands? Is that what you're trying to
Yeah,
say?
yes. How come? How come? How come? If Samoa says we're the heart of Polynesia, we're the origin, that's not putting down anyone else. But
Mm,
when we say Tonga was the heart and the center of Polynesia, and let's use this example right here. Um, and we'll just watch the beginning of this. This is the Moana live premiere, right? The release of
mm.
of of Moana, and we're excited that Moana comes out. Now it's heavily Samoan influence, right?
Yeah.
For the right reason, for the right reasons. I mean, The
The
Rock
Rock,
is
The Rock
Samoan,
is
of
the
course.
biggest.
Yeah, it's the
He
biggest star.
makes the money flow. I,
Yes,
I I have a feeling that he's the reason why there's a live action. There's a
yes,
live action one.
yeah. So let me just say that thought, Dara, and
Mm.
then listen to this.
For our ending portion of our time together, I'm going to take you to the heart of Polynesia, to the islands of Samoa.
Okay, and it's beautiful. This is good. This is a good thing. The whole world gets to see Asian culture.
Yeah.
And they bring out the girl who plays Moana, and it's 100% Samoan,
Yeah.
right? And this is a beautiful thing. This is good. Obviously, this is a very that's the girl.
What was that, Tua? Sorry, you cut out for a little bit.
That's the dad of the girl.
Ah,
That's the dad of the girl.
in the movie. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me take the position that Dara Leota and multiple people on Facebook take. Right. So this is not me. Imagine I am taking their position. What does Samoa have to put down everybody else in the Pacific? in Polynesia? Don't they know they're just like us? Why does Samoa have to dominate Moana, right? Why do they have to go on stage and say, I'm going to take you to the heart of Polynesia, Samoa?
No, it's the cardinal direction, Tua, because it's in the middle, and the middle has to be the heart that pumps the
Ah,
vessels to all of
oh,
the islands.
to the
That's why
rest.
it's the heart,
Oh,
the cardinal
okay.
direction.
But still, why you have to be the heart? Why can't is the heart more important than everyone else? Why couldn't Samoa be the ear or the nose or something worse
The heart is more important than the brain,
in the
Tua.
brain? Okay. Now look, that's one way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
Just like that's one way to look at what we're talking about and how we say things, right? Or you can say, like when I saw that, was I in any instance like, I'm so angry, these Samoans think? I was like, no. I was
Yeah.
like, dude, this is good. This is a win for all of Polynesia,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
This is a win for all of Polynesia. This is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. And I love it. I'll promote it. I hope it does well, even though it looks like it's going to lose over $100 million, and it's not going to do well financially. But you know what? I don't care. Polynesian culture was put on the map. We win. Disney loses because they're going to lose at least $100 million. But Polynesia wins, and Polynesia
Mm.
means Tonga wins, means Samoa wins. I'm happy for the Samoans. This is something that is good for them. It's good for us.
Yeah. No, interesting, Tua, that you said that it's losing money because I did go and watch it actually this week, Wednesday. Man, the theater wasn't full. So I told my wife after we watched it, I was like, I'm surprised that it wasn't as full as I thought it would because it was, it's just released, but dang, that's interesting. Are people just maybe the first what people are just not that fascinated with the live action compared to the animation?
No,
What's your
I read a few things, and a lot of it is just maybe poor timing by Disney. Some people
mm,
think it was way too soon from Moana 2, right? Moana 2
ah,
just came out. Then they also said there's like two other movies like Minions and one other Disney movie or family movie that's out there. So you're going to compete against those two or three movies that are doing relatively well. So it's a combination because the Moana brand is actually a strong brand. It's one of the most popular brands, but a lot of
mm.
people are saying it was bad timing,
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I
possibly.
was just curious. I was curious on that because when you brought that up, I was like, dude, yeah, I remember thinking, I was like, dang, it wasn't that full when I went to go watch it. I was
Yeah.
a little shocked.
Yeah, and so and then a lot of people are saying it's almost like a carbon copy of the first Moana movie, like the storyline, like the shots, the angles, the songs.
Eh,
Some people are like, you could have done it a little bit different. Personally, I don't care, right?
yeah,
But yeah, but like here, real quick before we go too far, we always
yeah.
want to say thank you to our paying members, Tevita
Oh, Tevita.
Torfoki. He says Fijians
Hello.
were there during the time of the Tuitonga and Maufanga. No,
Ah,
100%. Appreciate that. And Devita, we're excited for your podcast that's coming up. We're
yes.
looking forward to
Tevita
it.
Toyfoki. No, that's interesting. No, like what Tevita mentioned too. Like I mentioned earlier, I kind of put the Fijian encounter a little bit earlier, but looks like there's a lot of I kind of put the Fiji encounter like more of the Tui Hatagalawa timeline and
Mm,
going forward. Nothing. I didn't think it went past or went before that, but it looks like our Fiji islands was there for the beginning, and Maufanga seems to be the place. So yeah,
yeah.
malo tevita toifoki. Appreciate it.
No, and here's Tauti Awate Jenny. Why can't Samoa be the heart? Is what she's saying. We don't say Samoa can't be the heart, Jenny. And for every Samoan, it should be the heart, right?
Mm,
Like for every Samoan, it should be the heart. But when we go from the subjective, it should be the heart to every Samoan. When you zoom out and you ask the questions, where was the centralized power Where was the civilization? Uh,
Oldest settlement of
all that
Polynesians.
where was the capital? Where is all these things that says, and as far as we stand right now, where was the original, founders of the Polynesian civilization? The data is pretty overwhelming that it's not Samoa. That's
Yeah.
what we're saying. We're not saying it can't be, but we're just saying, people coming and saying we're like this, we're like that. We're like, no, like we can't control how you react to
Yeah.
our content, and in many ways your reaction to our content may reflect more about you than it does about us,
Yeah.
because we're Samoan, we're Tongan, we're Fijian. We're just saying the data says Tonga, and it's almost undeniable from our perspective. And you know what? We have an open door policy. Anyone who wants to come and
Yes.
talk to us, we are more than willing to have that conversation. But unfortunately, so far, we've only had crickets, and no one has wanted to come and join us. Anything on that, Masi, before we go back to the slide deck?
No, just to add like what you were saying with Jenny's question, what makes us right what makes Polynesian like different than any other race, other than our being hospitable and all of that kind of stuff. But the number one thing is our knowledge and navigation, and the navigation ruin is in Tongatapu. Like
Yeah,
that's the heart. That's really, because if you think about it, the heart is the one that pumps it to the other vessels of the veins to kind of bring alive the other islands. And without that knowledge, the
yeah.
ruin of
The
the
navigation
Ha'amonga
is
and
key.
Maui, that it's nowhere else in Polynesia or even in East Asia. The only places in the Americas and in Tongatapu. So that to me that's the biggest one. Just to add like the other statements you shared to us, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's what makes that's our contribution. We're the master navigators in compared to any other race in the world. It's because of
yes.
the navigational knowledge we
And
have.
and when it gets to the extent, like Masi is 100% correct. We cannot over exaggerate the significance of the Ha'amonga. The Ha'amonga is not just a physical structure. It was the key to tracking the sun, tracking the seasons. If you don't know the seasons and the weather patterns, you can't
Yeah,
navigate,
yeah,
right? It's not like today where we had the fuel diesel engine where it doesn't matter which direction the wind's flowing or whatever. That was critical. And then to make it even more sophisticated, that was one of the main constellations in the sky that allowed you to travel in the northern and southern hemisphere for 6 months out of the year. And then to make it even more sophisticated, that is the foundational concept of the Taumafakava or the Furi Taunga, was based off of the double V and the Ha'amonga. That structure, it is literally taking the order of the heavens and reflecting it down here on earth. So we have a whole episode that talks about it. And at the rate we're going, we because our growth is continuing to grow and get more exposure, we understand people aren't going to go back and watch that episode is probably like a year ago. We might have to revisit it. One of the things we're learning on the podcast, repetition is king,
yeah,
right? When we see certain questions popping up all the time on social media, even if we've covered in the past, if it makes sense, we will revisit it again.
yeah.
All right, let's come back to our deck here.
Next slide. I think we've
Next
touched on
slide.
that, huh? All right, I'll
Yes,
read this one. Tonga's unique success story. 18 May 1900. Treaty of Friendship and Protection with Britain. Britain took control of foreign affairs and defense. Tonga kept its king, 1875 constitution, internal laws, traditional land system, and cultural control. Key outcome: Tonga was never formally colonized, the only Pacific island nation with this distinction. 1970 New Treaty. Tonga regained full external sovereignty and joined the Commonwealth as an independent nation. Why it worked? Strong, unified monarchy plus clever diplomacy by kings Dupo the first and second, plus British strategic interests aligned with Treaty of Friendship and Protection approach. Tua, any quick thoughts?
Yeah, couple things here. Number one, it's a treaty, right? It was a treaty. It wasn't colonization. A treaty is between two independent parties. It's like a contract. They came together, they wrote a contract. Here's your roles and responsibilities for each one. Now they came to agreement. These are two sovereign entities, right? When you're colonized, it is not two sovereign entities. It is Big Brother came in and said, you're not going to decide where the lock and key goes. You're not going to decide what happens in your house. I will dictate it to you. The other thing that I learned, this is why,
Uh-huh.
one of the benefits of doing the podcast, I didn't realize that the 1970 was a re signing of a new treaty, right?
Mm,
Which further strengthens the idea that the protectorate was a treaty of two independent sovereign nations. When Tonga came out of the protectorate friendship treaty, it was through another treaty to reset the terms, right? And so once again, Tonga is still in a friendship treaty with Britain, but not a protectorate and friendship treaty. They took out the protection piece and Tonga kept the friendship piece. And actually, in this treaty, it's what allowed Tonga to join the Commonwealth. It gave Tonga the pathway to join the Commonwealth, and that's how Tonga is able to participate in there. The other important thing is the reason why this is important and why we're having this discussion. We were told that Tonga lost control of its culture and history.
hmm
Yet the biggest benefit of a protectorate position is you control your culture and your history. When you're colonized, you don't have that control. You don't have control over your internal laws. You don't have control over your land system, and you don't have control over your culture. And we talked about it. Some people were forced, you cannot speak Tongan or
Yeah,
Samoan. You cannot believe in this cultural system. Tonga enforced some of that, but it was self-imposed. It wasn't dictated by a foreign government. Those are kind of my thoughts there, Mr.
yeah.
Atero.
Now, to me, it's just a cool comment. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, what in the 1900s that the monarchy of you're talking about the strongest empire of
Superpower. It
that
was the
time,
superpower.
superpower.
Yeah.
They controlled. I think during that time, the British monarchy controlled, or the government controlled, the most population than any other country because they
Largest
had India,
largest
right,
empire of all time.
of all
The
time.
saying was the sun never sets on the British Empire because it didn't matter which side of the world, the sun was always shining on the British Empire because it
No,
was so
and
big.
yes, and isn't that such inspiration for all Tongans that your own kind monarchy sat on the same table and the same level playing field as the strongest superpower in the world in that time or ever, like the sun that never sets. What a crazy phrase to use, that they sat as equals. To me, that's just amazing. So to me, I find that inspirational because one, never think that you're not good enough for certain things. Because look,
Never
if
think you don't belong at the table.
don't belong at the table, look at that. That to me, that is mind blowing. But to me, that is the smarts and this doesn't come out of nowhere. You're talking about DNA because the Tui Kampolo, which was Tupo the first, that has connections to the Tui Tonga that's been doing this many, 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 many years, that you can navigate and see yourself as equal as the strongest superpower in the other side of the world in the British Empire. So to me, I just find that amazing, very astonishing and amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that why it worked, people, and I think you identified this again, Mr. Ateroa, that strong unified monarchy. And you have to remember, we're not just talking about Tupo the First. We're talking about the system, the Tongan system of centralized power and the understanding that you have to be cohesive, because Tupo the First is only as strong as how cohesive all of his chiefs
Yeah.
and everybody that's underneath him, right? And this is something that people underestimate what Laufiri Tonga did. Laufiri Tonga understood this. He understood, dude, the only way we're going to survive colonization is Tonga has to be unified, and we cannot have the old
Yeah.
system. The old system was working against Tonga at that time. Having 2 or 3 kingly lines, it gave foreign powers too many opportunities to
Pick a
divide the
side.
country.
Pick a side, because
Yes,
they were doing it in just with our neighbors, and I'm pretty sure, like what you mentioned, to the Tuitonga and even Taufa, the Tuikanapolo were knowing what's going on with our brothers and sisters in Samoa, with them picking the sides of the British having the Marietoa clan, and then the Germans picking Mataafa, which is another powerful clan, and they were fighting each other, and that's what color, they were
that's
playing
what
that
led to
game.
them. Yeah,
Yeah, being
exactly.
colonized.
And that's one of the reasons. Everywhere, Fiji, same thing.
Same. Yeah,
Lack of unification of leadership. You also mentioned, Masi, that was one of the challenges in Aotearoa. The tribes were fighting against each other and backed
picking
by
sides.
different groups,
Yeah,
right? And you have to understand how important this is, and realize Laufiri Tonga, he was well above Tupo the First, and you know for a fact, because he was Catholic and Tupo the First was Methodist, you know for a fact the Catholic nations, the Catholic powers are saying, "Hey, we got France, right?
yeah,
We got Portugal, we got Spain,
yeah,
we got powerful nations backing us. Laufini Tonga, you should be in power, right? Trying to do the same thing of the Marietoa and the Tuimanua, whatever, to fight each other. And what does Laufini Tonga do? No, I'm going to sacrifice the Tuitonga title so that Tupo the First can hopefully unify our country. And then the installment of the Taumafakava, so that Tupo the First had a culture. This is the important part. You cannot just have military power and influence. If you only have military power and influence, you end up places like Fiji and other places where it's just a battle, right?
mm,
You have to have cultural legitimacy.
yeah,
And Laufiri Tonga gave that to Tupo the First by giving him the Taumafakava and by instructing the Farefa to set it up correctly, make sure everyone knows that the Tuikanukupolu no longer has an Ilo kava. It now has a Taumafa kava that is patterned after the Furi Taunga, which belongs to the Tuitonga. That sends a clear signal to all the other chiefs. Let's get behind Tupo the First.
yeah.
And it was still tough. It was still tough.
Oh yeah, yeah. Self-sacrifice. That's a big deal. Big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, next one. I believe it's my turn. It's contrast many others became full colonies. So these are other people who had protectorate status that did
Mm,
not come out successful on the other end, right? It's the Cook
okay.
Islands. The Cook
Yep.
Islands had a protectorate status in 1888, annexed by New Zealand 3 years later,
Mm,
right? Niue, similar path to New Zealand administration. British New Guinea or Papua, protectorate in 1884, annexed 1888, later an Australian territory. See how short lived these are?
yeah, they don't
Solomon
last long.
Islands, yeah. Protectorate 1893, evolved into a colony. Kiribati and Tuvalu protectorate became a full colony. French Polynesia, early protectorates, full French control and annexation. The pattern, what's the typical pattern? Protectorate status was often a stepping stone to fuller colonial rule. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like you going to protectorate status, it was still in danger of colonization. And there's a big, big difference of protectorate status and colonization. Those are very different. Any thoughts on this, Mr. Atero?
Very interesting. I like this slide because I'm looking like at the dates of how they actually became colonized. I didn't know actually that so many like Cook Islands, Niue, French, Polynesia, which is Tahiti, that had the protectorate status, and obviously, I'm thinking those islands. And the thing is, people need to understand holding like even your internal matters, there's a lot of disputes, but Tonga coming out of that and saying that they still want independent was a very tough thing. Because I'm telling you, during these protectorate status, a lot of this time is you're probably being introduced to a lot of technology from the West. Two, you're probably introduced education in how to write and all of these things, and better access to goods like, I'm sure Western medicine was probably a big deal in those
Hmm.
days. And even the food, I'm sure they probably brought a lot of. I know they introduced new animals like the cows and horses, but that probably facilitated during those times, made people's lives a lot easier. And I'm just thinking those islands were like saying, "Yeah, let's go to full colonization."
No,
You
there
know
are
what I
certain
mean?
benefits. Yes.
Yeah, let's go to full colonization and stuff, and let's enjoy these goods. But Tonga is a lot different. The and like you touch on it, Tua, the cultural identity is our land. That you cannot wave the bread and say, "Come this way off your land and eat this bread while I go stay over there." It probably took a lot of effort and a lot of convincing. Maybe convincing, maybe in certain political disputes and
Yeah.
maybe some deaths and stuff internally in Tonga, because I'm sure there was some of our fellow Tongans that wanted to be a British colony, and I'm sure that's more of probably family stories that stays within family, and certain other ones that you don't really hear about. But I'm sure that was a lot of going on, and it wasn't easy because our fellow Polynesian branches in the Polynesian nation obviously didn't last long in the protectorate status, and then they wanted the full colonization because of the benefits. That's just me.
Yes.
Tua, I don't know if I'm missing it out there, but
No,
yeah.
the thing I would add is it is impressive, and this is what makes Tonga's like experience and what they accomplished so impressive, right?
Mm,
When number one was how long it took to before it had to go to the protectorate status, and we'll talk about why it had to maybe in a little bit.
mm,
But to defend yourself before you get to protectorate status is very challenging and very difficult, right? Because you have to build a government, you have to build uh, a structure, you have to build
yeah.
laws, you have to be viewed as legitimate. Now, when you go to protectorate status, the reason why it's basically 100% failure rate except for Tonga is because whose game are you playing when you go to protectorate status? When you go to treaties, this is not a Polynesian game
Yeah.
you're playing now. This is the Westerners' game. This is the
Yeah.
Westerners where they've had hundreds to thousands of years. They like I wouldn't be surprised if Britain thought we're gonna get Tonga to be a
Yeah.
protectorate and we're
Yeah. They
eventually
were
gonna get
close.
them.
They were
Yes,
close. Yes. Yeah.
right? Because there are terms and you have to have a closer relationship.
Mm,
You can now understand what's going on in the local levels in detail because you have to be involved. But Tonga was very smart. Tonga was number one, extremely cohesive. But what was the other part? Tonga already had everything written in Tongan, and the government was conducted in Tongan. And
yes.
so it wasn't as easy for Britain to just come and infiltrate. So,
Mm,
what I'm trying to say is Tonga beat England in England's game.
own
And that is
game.
impressive.
At
That
its
is
peak,
impressive.
at,
And
at
it's,
at the
yes,
British peak of their power. That's amazing.
yes.
That's
right?
amazing.
And naturally, the reason why we point this out, because you don't just sit around and then learn how to be a chess master, right? You don't just sit around, go fishing every day, plant taro every day, and then sit at a chessboard
Yeah.
and say, "Oh, I can figure out, I understand how to play chess." No, when you're already somewhat familiar with the rules of chess, because you were the center of the Polynesian Empire, because you've been managing a government for thousands of years, and it's not just one person in Tonga, it is a whole slew of nobles and
Yeah.
of people. The people on Tongatapu, they understood cohesion, they understood structure, they understood government. This is why Tui Halafatai and them were so bored in Tonga, because Tonga was so structured and organized. There wasn't a lot of room to just cause chaos and wars. They would
Yeah.
have to go to Fiji to go and experience war because there wasn't that cohesive structure. And that's what makes this impressive is Tonga got into this game and was able to manage and play the European game, a new game, so to speak, and they were able to come out victorious. That says a lot.
Mm.
That says a lot. All right. We ready to go to the next one?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. This is
Pacific.
me.
Oh, is that me or you? Okay. Maybe it's
This is
you.
me.
Okay.
Yep.
Read it.
Pacific leaders who asked for protection and were denied. Tahiti, 1825, 1839, 1841. Queen Pomade the Fourth and chiefs appealed to Britain multiple times. Britain was reluctant, costs and religious tensions. France forced a protectorate in 1842 to 1843 and later annexed. Fiji, 1858, 1860s to 1870s. Chief Takumbau offered cession repeatedly. Britain delayed, rejected until 1874 due to cost and policy. Samoa, chiefs sought British protection and amid civil wars. Britain avoided full commitment, led to tripartite. How would you say that, Dua? Tri,
Tripartite.
tripartite arrangement, then partition.
Yep.
Hawaii and others. Diplomatic efforts for protection, some temporary claims rejected by London, eventual annexation by other powers. Common theme Britain often practiced reluctant imperialism until strategic needs or chaos forced action. Interesting. Tua, quick,
So
quick thoughts.
people who try to put down treaty of protection, be very
Ah,
careful because when you're going through a difficult time, it was kind of seen as a last option to prevent colonization, right? It was a last ditch effort to try and say, can someone recognize me as somewhat as a peer
mm,
and agree to my terms, because it cost money to be a protectorate. And if your country was in chaos and wasn't structured, or you had made too many commitments to a foreign power, England was like, do I want to get into a war over you? Probably
yeah,
not. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It had to make sense. And so for people who say, oh, Tonga got a protectorate, hey, don't forget Tahiti, Fiji,
Tahiti,
Samoa, Hawaii,
Fiji, Samoa, Hawaii.
multiple people wanted that
Yeah,
and couldn't get it, right? And couldn't get it sometimes. And so it was either delayed or they went straight into colonization. So the point of this slide is to show, before you make fun of the getting to a treaty of friendship and protectorate, remember that this, depending on your situation, it was the last ditch effort to try and prevent colonization,
mm,
right? So once again, you don't just sit around and then get protectorate status. You actually have to bring something to the table. you have to bring something to the table. And what did Tonga bring to the table? Tonga brought a unified structure of government, and they had
Mhm.
an economy, right? Like
Yeah,
that's one of the things I learned, and I didn't realize it. Tonga funded and were the missionaries that spread Christianity throughout Polynesia.
we funded the entire Pacific region for the
Yes,
Wesleyan faith or Methodist
yes.
faith.
And so Tonga brought, as funny as it sounds today, Tonga brought economic influence and stability, right? Compared to other nations. Now, things have changed because a lot of our brothers and sisters on the different islands, they got the investment of the colonizers, right? Their infrastructure gets
Yeah,
built. They get access to education sooner. They get the ability to go overseas and get resources from overseas.
drink
And
some of their
us,
nice tea
their nice
from.
tea and coffee cake and everything. And us in Tonga, that was one of the things that we sacrificed because of colonization. We were just trying to stay alive and survive, that we did not get access to the West. We did not get the money of the West to say we need to invest in our colony because it's part of our quote unquote empire. We didn't get that. And so there were certain weaknesses, or at least opportunity costs, that we didn't get because we remained sovereign. We are we had to figure out how to fund ourselves for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. No, and just to add on to like I was just thinking, those like countries like Tahiti, Fiji, Samoa, Hawaii. While they, it's I mean it's just all well, kind of really what happened. They were probably you drink because during that time they were probably getting the nice things of the cakes and the nice biscuits and stuff, while Tonga was probably in the umu having the to'okutu and eating that. But at the same time, it was worth to do it because we were the, our leaders were seeing what was happening around them. It was better to eat the Tongan bread, the to'okutu, but we were able to sleep and do what we wanted in our own land, and that's what we were exchanging, right? To have
Yeah.
our own sovereignty.
Nobody
Um,
nobody had to come and tell us you had to do X, Y, and Z in order to get access to a resource. You
yes,
know?
and no, and this slide is very interesting. Tua. You know how a lot like Tahiti was, that's very interesting. They're trying to seek another superpower because they were seeing what France was gonna do, and
Yes.
Britain was not gonna see. And this is the thing, Britain was not, because if they are gonna put a claim in, that means they would have to contend with the French, which is their neighbor, and they were not willing to sacrifice that um, military resources and might to try to contend with that. So they, regarding what they perceived they were going to get from Tahiti Islands, it wasn't worth it. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, Tahiti, and
No, and
that's
that's
what
the
happened.
thing.
Yeah,
You had to have a legitimate claim. And
yeah,
and a lot of these, England initially said we don't have a legitimate claim. In
yeah,
Tonga, we have a legitimate claim because Tonga is a organized, structured, independent nation that is unified. We can, and there's order. We're coming in to protect them, right?
yeah,
And that kind of solidifies their position a lot better than some of these other nations where it was chaotic. There was no unified leadership. And so it was, well, why does England get to take them? They have no
yeah,
real legitimate reason to take them.
yeah. See, and
Yeah.
we were very clear on that Fiji one, Takumbao. That's that 1858, 1860s to the 70s. That's when the military, let's just say, campaign of Maafu was happening during
Yeah.
that time frame. So he was just trying to save his self-interest of political power, and he was better. He was gonna get it with the British. So that's an interesting thing there. We are very familiar with Hawaii. See Hawaii, knowing that it was contending with American influence with the plantation and stuff, and try to get um uh so it was rejected by London, but they were trying to seek protectorate status from
Mhm.
England. So nah, very interesting, very interesting. Just more things to you know understand the difficulty. So what Tonga was able to come out of, very interesting.
All right. The next one. Is this me now?
I yes, it's you.
Yes. So islands that formed their own governments but were still colonized, right?
Yep.
Hawaii, unified kingdom under Kamehameha dynasty, plus a constitution overthrown in 1893, annexed by the US in 1898. So it was
Yep.
first an internal revolution that led to annexation 5 years later. Tahiti, Kingdom of Tahiti, Pomare dynasty, monarchy, French protectorate, then full colony, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fiji, chiefly confederations and unified attempts under Takombau, British became British colony by 1874. Samoa, traditionally chiefly systems and factional governments, partitioned by between Germany and the U.S. Tonga stands out as the major exception that preserved internal sovereignty.
Mm.
Any thoughts there, Mr. Ateroa?
No, I'm just seeing the weaknesses, right? Because Hawaii, I know the reason why Hawaii failed. It's their monarchy made a big mistake on allowing foreigners to have land, and when they
Yeah,
had land, right, they allowed them influence to. They also allowed. That's another thing that was probably a mistake that the Hawaiian monarchy did. They allowed non-Hawaiian to actually be part of their parliament voting system in their government, which was a bad idea because it was the thing is, right? They already had so many Hawaiian families mixed with these foreigners, so they
foreigners.
kind of saw, yeah, so they allowed them to kind of fit in, but at the end of the day, most of those, I'm sure there were some Palangis that had good Hawaiian interests, but unfortunately they were the minority. The major ones with the big influence that had, you know, Hawaiian spouses, their allegiance was to the foreign power for bigger markets, like what you mentioned, to sell their
Mhm.
produce of what
Yeah.
Hawaiian islands had to offer. And that was the downfall with that.
Real
Humana
quick,
Dynasty
Masi,
monarch.
before you move on, another
Yeah.
interesting thing. I watched this one guy and he gave an interesting perspective. And it goes back to what you were saying, Masi, when you kind of fall in love with the Western products and lifestyle.
Yeah.
He said a lot of the Hawaiian royalty would
Yeah.
go for months and travel to Europe and to
And
America
indulge. And
and go
indulge.
out and do that. And then
Yeah.
because they married into those palangis, the palangi guy stayed behind
Yeah.
and started dictating. It's kind of like what you were saying, Masi. You're out going checking out the bullies, and someone came in and took over your home. He gave an interesting perspective that that's what he felt was the distraction of going and experiencing and having the Western European experience, while the Palangi stayed back behind and took over the
Yeah.
nation. At least that's what his perspective was. So I thought that was interesting.
No, very, very interesting. That's my thoughts there. See, I'm not too familiar with that Pomare dynasty. I know they were a powerful dynasty that kind of unified the the Tahitian islands, but and that's they probably didn't have the many, many years of knowledge of how to navigate superior powers other than your local level of
Mm,
politics. So I'm sure that's what kind of circum the Tahitian islands to the French um,
I'm
superpower.
gonna I'm gonna try and
Uh
find the video, but
huh.
that queen, oh, this one. Let me show this video, Masi, to kind
Go
of
for it.
give
Go for
you this is about the Pomare queen, and I didn't know
it.
this. Assuming this is accurate, she actually went to Tonga and lived in Tonga for a while.
Okay. Okay.
See the
Interesting.
true romantic story, the Tahitian queen Pomare the fourth,
Yep.
right? And it says she had a romantic relationship with a Tongan nobleman.
Okay.
So it says she was born on February 28th, 1813, at the Tahitian Royal Palace in Tahiti. Her father was King Pomare of Tahiti from 1782 to 1821. And says King Pomare III of Tahiti. When her father died, her younger brother became King Pomare III of Tahiti. In 1822, she married the first She married first to King Tapoa II of Taha'a and Bora Bora. They had no children and they divorced. And says King Pomare III of Tahiti from 1820 to 1827. When her younger brother, King Pomare III, died of influenza epidemic in 1927 without a legitimate heir, she became Queen Pomare IV of Tahiti at the age
Mm,
of 14 years old. So very
interesting.
young queen. In 1830, it was said at the age of 17 years old, she visited the kingdom of Tonga. She performed her government duties and to signed an allegiance between the kingdom of Tahiti and the kingdom of Tonga,
Interesting. Yeah.
right? Just like Ma'afu was trying to do the same thing
Yeah.
with Fiji, with Tonga, and Tupou
Eastern
the
Fiji.
First. It
Yeah.
looks like Tahiti was trying to do a similar thing too, because everybody was recognizing probably Tonga stability and influence and relationships, trying to be, in an alliance, and part of Tonga was probably a positive thing, viewed as a positive
Yeah.
thing. Says during her stay, she was considered to be a potential bride to the king of Tonga.
Mm,
Instead, she fell in love with a Tongan nobleman. It said the Tongan nobleman fell in love with. Who is it? And says his name is Honorable Inoke Fotu. Is it Veikune?
okay.
Veikune from the Tongan
Yeah.
royal noble of the House of Veikune. The Tongan noble House of Veikune is a Tongan royal clan branch of the Tu'ihatakalaua dynasty of Tonga. It's
Mm,
an
okay.
interesting story. It just came to mind
Yeah.
when you were bringing
Yeah.
up. And then let's just try and finish. Forgetting her government duties, she spent most of her time with Honorable Inoke and fell pregnant to him after she gave birth to her son, Semisemilolo
Mm,
Oehau, in 1830. She was called back to Tahiti. She returned to her home and began her long reign as Queen of Tahiti. Kingdom of Tahiti, right there, obviously. Her son was left behind to be raised up in Tonga by her lover's family, and she never visited Tonga again. In 1832, she married for the second time to her first cousin, Tenania Arifi Faiaite Ahiro, and they had 10 children. She would continue to fight to keep her Tahitian kingdom independent from France due to British intervention. Due to her threats from the French Imperial, she tried she tried to sign the Kingdom of Tahiti as a British protectorate, right? Just like we were
yeah.
talking about, by appealing to Queen Victoria, but was unsuccessful. Instead of the Kingdom of Tahiti becoming a French protected state after Tahiti lost the war to them. She knew without British protection, the end of her kingdom would not last long under her son. See,
Mm,
they were trying to get protectorate status because it was a last ditch resort.
yeah. Yeah.
Says King Pomare of Tahiti, the last monarch. When Queen Pomare IV passed away in 1877, her son became King Pomare IV. He was the last monarch of Tahiti. The Kingdom of Tahiti became a French colony in 1880. So
1880.
3 years after she died.
Yeah. Like
I
as she
mean, yeah,
predicted. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's why she's trying to build a relationship with Tonga. She's trying to get British protectorate status. She's just trying to find a way to preserve her kingdom. As for the Queen Pomare IV's son, Semilolo Oehau grew up in Holonga village, Vava'u.
Mm,
He married a Tongan Rotuman wife, Akesa, and they had 6 children. Um, the Tongan Fijian descendant of Queen Pomare of Tahiti still lives on and tell their story to this day. Oh, so they live in Fiji. One of the
Fiji.
descendants of Mrs. Vai Lolomoli Corey, age 86, lived in Suva, Fiji, to tell the story in 1968. So that's her telling the
Ah.
history. And then Mrs. Vai Lolomoli Corey and her granddaughter, Mrs. Meta Hussein in Suva City, Fiji, 1968. It's believed there's over 1,000 living descendants in Tonga, and Fiji are from Queen Pomare IV, Tonga noblewoman Honorable Inoke Fotu Veikune. So that's the family history there. So I mean, but this is not something
Fascinating.
new. You know, Tahitians were marrying into Tonga. We have a
Yeah.
lot of oral history, thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, this type of marriage and relationship going on. But hey, I just wanted to bring that up because
No,
it,
awesome.
it,
Thank you
it
for bringing that
reminded
up.
me of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Masi. Anything else
No,
to stick out to
no,
you?
no. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Do I learned something on that? I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing with the Veikune family on that. Chiefly Fiji. We understand Fiji's history with Kakumbao. It was more of a self-interest kind of thing. My understanding. Yep, Samoa. My understanding with American Samoa is the chiefs wanted to be colonized by the Americans, and they literally gave it up for the Americans, and the Americans saw it as a as a harbor place. Pango Pango is known as one of the best places to harbor ships. So that's my understanding with that. And then Germany obviously had the western part. But to my understanding, with it looks like Western Samoa fought back, but the Tutuila Islands pretty much, and most of the chiefs on those islands and American Samoa,
I
Manua,
mean,
voluntarily actually gave it up without even any second thoughts on that. So
no,
that's my
100%.
understanding with
It's
that.
it's it's the
Yeah.
it's the same thing that Takumbao does in Fiji, right?
Mhm.
What's the alternative? The alternative is Western Samoa has way bigger population. They have Germany, which is a pretty strong backing power at that time. If you're the Tutuila and Manua Islands, what are your options? You
Mm,
don't have a lot of options. So you're like, I'm looking for someone who's willing to protect me. It's a protectorate status and defend me from my internal enemies, right?
mm,
So it's the same thing like Takumbao. It was like, man, we're running out of options here. I might as well negotiate a deal to maintain some power.
yeah. But those are my thoughts there. Dua.
Okay,
That's live.
awesome. Next one.
Is me.
Yeah,
Why Tonga sought the 1900 treaty and why it worked. What drove Tonga to seek protection? French naval pressure and unequal treaty, 1855. Growing German commercial influence and interest in Vava'u as a coaling station, 1899. A partition of Samoa. Britain wanted to prevent German expansion near Fiji. Why Britain accepted a protectorate model, low cost strategic win, control of foreign affairs, plus harbor access without full colonial costs. Tonga already had a stable constitutional monarchy, 1875, easier to influence than fully administer. Why Tonga was never formally colonized. Strong unified monarchy plus progressive constitution made full takeover harder to justify. Skilled Tongan diplomacy, playing powers against each other. Britain got what it wanted, foreign control, no rival bases, through the lighter protectorate model. Quick thoughts, Tua?
yeah. I mean, a lot of people forget that one of the best, if not the best, natural harbor in Polynesia is in Vava'u, right? That's Vava'u is well recognized as one of the best natural harbors. That's one of the reasons why England wanted to make sure they were influencing Tonga because they didn't want Germany or someone else to use that harbor, a very strategic harbor, to potentially influence in Fiji and other areas. So that's something that a lot of people don't always recognize. The other thing too is the growing commercial influence. The big challenge that Tonga had, we had not fully, and it seems like even to this day, we haven't fully figured out finance, how
Hmm.
to manage money, right? And so what happened was Tonga got into a decent amount of debt to Germany, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
And Vava'u had become a pretty strong, like, trading area because
So
of
it
the
was.
harbor going in and out. It
Did they
had
ever
become
make? Did they ever make as much or close to what Tonga Tapu was making financial wise for Tonga, or they were
it.
getting close?
They were getting close because of the German influence.
Trades. Yeah.
The trade coming
Yeah.
in and out. I mean, that's what people say. Vava'u wanted to be their own nation at some
Yeah.
point, right? That's the
They
joke.
they they wanted
Vava'u was that.
they wanted to be colonized. Is that what you were saying?
Vava,
Because
Vava'u was tasting the coffee, cake, and the tea, and it's like, you know what? I can get used to this. And even
yeah,
to this day, Vava'u has a high German
yeah,
mix rate, right? The
yeah.
Wolframs, was it leeches? I mean, there's
Sam,
a sand,
yeah,
there's a lot of
yeah.
those. I mean,
Love
but
German.
Vava'u had become a pretty influential trading area.
Mm.
Um, and then the other thing too that I really wanted to kind of talk about was the stability that Tonga offered made it a reason why they accepted the protectorate, right?
Yeah,
England was not just giving protectorate to everybody and their dog. They were very strategic. There were reasons why England wanted to have that influence, and at the very least foreign control, right? And they probably, if the opportunity presented itself, colonization. Um, but yeah, oh Yahweh, haven't seen this guy in a while, Mr. Atearoa.
hey, Maria, Malo water bears, Malo and Maukava. Water bears mentioned Vaini is the birthplace of Polynesia, bro. Stop playing. Oh yeah,
Yay.
Vaini Poto. All day, every day, water bears.
What
Malo,
a
good to
Bears.
see you.
What a Bears. I have to take the position of our brothers and sisters from Samoa. Why you gotta put everyone else down in Tongatapu for? Yeah.
I
Is
know.
why you have to put down everyone else
Shh.
and only lift up Vaini? Why you gotta
Yes.
be like that?
Why
Eh?
why why is Vaini the Poto one compared to our current Mua folks right now? To what's
Yeah.
going on?
You know?
Yeah,
Why
Vaini
you
Poto
yeah.
compared to Mua right now. Mga Poto Vaini.
Hey, what a
Malo Water
Bears.
Bears.
Malo Water Bears, as Masi said, Malo and Maukava, and Hangekoilau, Vaini Poto.
Yes,
Eh?
sir. Yes,
And
sir.
Water Bears, you missed it earlier. We were speaking in Spanish. Masi was using his Spanish and said he's going to eat a burrito. He's like, the
Yes.
best burritos and tacos come from Vaini. Eh?
Yes.
How about
All
that?
day. Oh wow.
Maria, malo. Those are my thoughts, Mr. Atearoa. Anything else?
Um, no, I'm always curious because I didn't, since doing this Polynesianized podcast, I had no idea that Vava'u wanted to be its own nation because it makes sense. If Vava'u was like you're talking about having big trading and was seeing themselves as making just as much money or really pretty good off compared to Tonga Tapu, I'm pretty sure they were seeking to become separate, to choosing a foreign power. That's what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking out loud that
Yeah,
Vava'u was really thinking of being colonized. So if they were really making a lot of money for like the German
yeah.
traders.
No,
Very interesting.
100%. Very, very so. Very much so. All right. Is this me or you?
Me?
This is
This is me.
me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why this history matters today explains Tonga's unique continuity of monarchy, constitution, and land tenure system. Highlights specific agency. Leaders were active diplomatic players, not passive victims. Show how legal status, treaty versus full colony, had lasting real world consequences for culture and sovereignty. Relevant to modern Pacific discussions, free association, compacts of free association, and relationships with larger powers. Tonga's story is a powerful reminder of what was possible when diplomacy, unity, and timing aligned. Tua, quick thoughts?
Yeah. Like, once again, you cannot come at least, and we're waiting for anyone. I invited Meow Sao Sao to come and
Yeah.
join us because she was like, I can tell you guys why Samoa has maintained all its culture and everything. And I said, hey, we are more than willing, Meow Sao Sao, for you to come and join us and tell
Yeah.
us, because our perspective is this: it is a very difficult thing to say, I got colonized, I got totally dictated to how I should behave, how I should do things, and say, you are the one who is the one who maintained your culture, and then come, especially when you're saying it to Tongans who have maintained sovereignty
Hmm.
since for thousands of years. Like, that to me is kind of like, when you boil down this slide, very difficult for anyone in Polynesia to come to Tonga and say, you guys lost your culture. You guys, we need to educate you on your culture, and therefore listen to us. And I was like, well, that would be like Elon Musk being educated on how to build rockets and satellites from the guy who's never kept a job for longer than 2 days,
Mm,
right? And I'm like,
mm,
there's, it's not on the same level. And I'm not trying to be, putting down. I'm just looking at it, trying to be as objective as possible. Why would the person or the group or the structure that has maintained independence take lectures on how to preserve culture from the people who were colonized? I just don't see that, you
yeah.
know? But if we say that, we're putting people down and we're trying to put others out down, where you just spent multiple paragraphs putting Tonga down and not recognizing what Tonga has achieved. That's kind of
Mm.
like my, what I take as the boiled down summary of this page.
Awesome. I want to focus on these three kind of distinguished words here with the diplomacy, unity, and timing aligned. I feel like the timing was the spiritual aspect of like Tonga surrendering with its famous, giving up its sovereign to pretty much God, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like that's because the timing issue is very significant, but I feel like that's God's doing with Tonga surrendering itself to God. And then the unity and diplomacy, that's a big deal of the residency of the Tuitonga and the residency because the other islands were the closest to the central power of, you're talking about years and years of how to navigate with the Inasi. You're doing diplomatic affairs with the other parts of the empire, right? And then the unity, because of course it's almost like the relatives you're gonna be close to as a relationship wise are the ones you live close. So Tongatapu and the unity in Vava'u and all of them were the closest. We had unity with the other ones, but because of colonization and the distance, it was probably affected with how keeping that relationship. But unity, because you're a centralized power, which Tonga was the only one in the Pacific, helped a lot with navigating the intricacies and complexities of dealing with foreign powers in their way of game.
Mm,
So
mm,
um, that's kind of my thoughts there. I kind of put the timing with Tonga giving it to God, unity and the diplomacy. Diplomacy, I think it's the Inasi and the Polo Polo that happen twice a year. I see that as a very diplomatic affair that's been
mhm,
happening many generations that when that they say if your family ancestry has done something for so thousands of years, you're gonna get that DNA with Taufa how navigating this part of the diplomacy and the unity just with the centralized power in Tongatapu. And Tongatapu, because it's close to the other island groups, felt more unity that everybody falls in line while the leadership kind of does its thing with dealing with foreign powers. So I don't know. That's when I was kind of going through that, I was just looking at that. I was like, oh, that's what I was thinking in my mind. So that I wanted to
okay.
share.
one thing, Masi, what is that Samoan saying that talks about Tonga and war
Oh
and,
yeah, yeah.
so
They
forth? Can
like
you talk
Tala.
through that? Talk through that real quick, and I will be right back. But talk through
Okay,
that real quick, and then I'll come back.
okay, all right. So with the common Samoan saying Tala Tofi, um, a Samoa, I Tala Tau or Tonga. That is a reference to many of Samoa's history as saying that Samoa was the inheritance from the beginning, and Talatau is because of Tonga's chaos, always causing wars. And just like what we mentioned before, Tonga was a very peaceful place, so it doesn't really align with that saying. I know that's a popular saying because Tonga was a very peaceful place, just like the Tui Halafatai. He and his group of men in the outer islands going to Fiji to seek war. So he was seeking war in Fiji because it was too peaceful in Tonga. So that saying, and that's what I was trying to mention, everybody, that with that saying with the Talatau or Tonga, I Talatofi or Samoa, Tonga is not Talatau Tonga. It's just a saying that people use because it fits a narrative, and just because it's used in speeches doesn't make it was correct. It's just like I've mentioned before. It's for entertainment, and it's just to, I don't know, dazzle. It's just to it's just to entertain. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there on the Talatau Tonga and Talatofio Samoa. Because I was just saying, like you mentioned it before with the Tui Halafatai. If that was the case of Tonga always being in war, the Tui Halafatai wouldn't have to leave to go seek war in Fiji. He could have just stayed in Tonga. But oh, Tua, you're on mute. You're on mute. But yeah, that's my saying, everybody, just regarding that. I know it's
Yes.
popular in Samoan speeches, but I just thought I would just share that.
No, share that. I asked you to share that because I have a thought to build on that. I think Wada Bear's cover was too strong. I had to do a little potty break. It's a
No
little
worries, no worries.
overwhelming. Imalo he kava vai ni. Um, but the reason why I wanted you to share that, Masi, because I think that's a little example of what we're talking about. That's an oral history that is kind of recognized and used. Would you say relatively common in
Pretty
in in
common.
in, in
It's
Samoan circles, right?
it's common enough that I've heard it used in the Samoan Parliament, so it's pretty common.
Yes.
That phrase.
So the reason why I want, because that to me is an example. You have this oral history that is geared around politics, right? It's a political thing.
Yeah.
It's to say, hey, we're so great in Samoa, Tonga, it's always in war. It only uses military power. But here, here in Samoa, we're different. Now, step back and let's look at reality, right?
Uh,
Let's look at what happened in Samoa. Samoa tried to resolve their issues that led to their colonization. Was it through politics and diplomacy? No, it was through war. They literally were fighting each other and they tried to get foreign powers. And that's what drove it, was that lack of cohesiveness of
mm,
these, because there was no centralized power, no long-term history of centralized power. It was always decentralized because only Tonga Tapu, the Tui Tonga, was the one who had centralized power.
uh,
Now, the reason why I say this is we just spent how many slides now? About an hour talking about how Tonga, through diplomacy, through cohesive unity, navigated colonization and maintained its sovereignty, right?
mm,
Tonga wouldn't have been able to do that if it only understood military power.
yes.
Tui Tonga, this to me, the reason why I bring this up is this is when you observe, this is why we try to tell people Tonga surviving colonization isn't evidence that Tonga was the center of the Polynesian Empire, because if you just understand military power, which is what all of our brothers and sisters had the most amount of experience with, it was military power. That's what they resulted in. It's human nature to result to military power to resolve things. That tells us that the Tuitonga and the Polynesian Empire, military power was not the primary tool to
Yeah.
manage the empire. And you have to remember, we're talking about the largest ocean, right? If you take the Polynesian Empire and you make it into a nation, it's the largest nation by today's standards. When you add just the surface area, a lot of it is ocean, and people, oh, well, that's it. A lot of it is ocean. Yes, that's a logistical, diplomatic nightmare. You're not going to maintain all of this through military power. You don't have enough ships, you don't have enough warriors. The weather, bad weather, let's say you're going in this giant armada to go and just smash someone, a bad storm comes and wipes you out. You're done. Right? So to me, this is the kind of stuff we're trying to correct. You have this idea that's implanted in Samoan oral history that Tonga only understands war. And that's the only thing that Tonga, understood is war and that kind of influence.
Hmm.
But when you look at the evidence and you look at reality, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Mm.
Right? And Tonga surviving colonization is a huge thing. But why do you think they mentioned that, Masi? Why do you think they mentioned that? I have an idea in my head.
Yeah, it could yeah, like I'm just thinking they probably thinking of the, I don't know, maybe recent history of maybe the Civil War, or even the Maria Toa incident. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Those,
That's what I'm looking at. The
yeah, those are
Marietoa.
the, yeah, because those are the recent history that they only know of, and they created a saying from that. So yeah, that's my
Because
thought.
Masi, if you're the Marietoa clan, what story are you going to emphasize to
Mm.
legitimize and to elevate your clan? We are the heroes of the story. Tonga was
Yeah,
the oppressor. Tonga was the military oppressor. We are
yeah,
the ones who freed Samoa. We are the ones who freed, and Tonga is only understands military
w-
power because
yeah,
that's the story they've developed and they've
yes,
told, right? And so that's what's going to be told. And then you have that story told enough times, even though we laugh at people, who make that comment. We kicked you guys out of Samoa, and then we're like,
we
you
came
don't
back.
know what. Not only we came back, but like you do realize that Tuitonga, his mom was Samoan,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the village that it happened at was his mom's village. So who were you kicking out? If the guy probably grew up in that village and his mom is from that village, who did you kick out?
yeah, yeah,
And then to add on to it, he says, "I'll be back." He
yeah,
didn't say I'll never come back. He says I'll be back.
yeah.
But this to me is a prime example in a little idea and a concept of how people, and then you hear that for generations and generations. And then when the Polynesian Eyes podcast comes on and says, the Maria Toa thing, that was a little scuffle. That wasn't that big of a deal. You're gonna get offended, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna get frustrated by it because, like, no, that's not what we've heard for thousands of years. And all these things. And I'm just like, relax, guys. Just look at the evidence. Does it really make sense? Right?
Take
And
a
so
chill
yeah,
pill. Take a
and
chill
that
pill for the
phrase,
sensitivity. Yeah.
yes, that phrase that we're talking about, all we're saying is relax, look at the evidence. And you have to remember, Samoa was a very important part of the Polynesian Empire. This is by no means we're saying Samoa is the worst or blah, blah, blah. No,
Yeah.
Samoa was a part of that core group that formed the Polynesian civilization and empire. Just don't say you're the capital. Just don't say
Yeah.
certain things, but like you still have a very important role
Role.
and contribution that you gave. Obviously, a lot of the Eastern Polynesians recognize, hey, a lot of our ancestors came from Samoa. Hey, great. Samoa was the launching point into Eastern Polynesia. Very
And
important role.
and that's fair. And we're just talking about where did the Ha'amoa people come from, and it's just from
Mhm.
Tonga. That's where we're coming.
That's
We
the
have we
next
have no
question.
we have no issue with Eastern Polynesia coming majority from Ha'amoa. It's more of where did the Ha'amoa come from?
Yeah. It's just like Moana. Moana is
Yeah.
a win for all of us. Do I
Correct.
have to go and cry and say, hey, we don't think these little details? Like, no, you take the win when it comes. And what's the win? The world gets to see Polynesian culture. Samoan culture is Tongan culture because we
Yes.
were all one nation, one people. When Samoa does good, Tonga does good. So
Uh,
we take the win. But yeah, I wanted you to share that story, Masi, of that phrase. What's the exact phrase again?
Talatofio Samoa, Talatau Tonga. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's a prime example of like how this whole misunderstanding happened. And if you we're just asking our brothers and sisters, just look at the evidence,
Mm,
right? Just look at that and just understand we're not saying we have to execute the person who came up with that phrase. We're just saying understand why they said that phrase, right?
yes.
And be like the Tuitonga, Talakai Faiki, when he got attacked, he didn't get all offended. He actually was like, hey, that's impressive.
Bravo. Bravo,
Yes, I
Maritoa.
recognize that. Yes, right.
I'll be back. Yeah.
Yes, when I hear that phrase of, in Samoa, we manage it this way, in Tonga, it's just about war, I'd be like, hey, that's good propaganda. Maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can learn something with that. You know, Messaging is powerful.
Yeah.
This guy has a powerful message. That's the way we need to look at it rather than, well, you got to put down everyone else just to
Right.
lift you up. It's like, no, learn. It's a positive. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that.
No, I'm good. I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
All right. Let's see if any of these questions, we may have covered a lot of this. This is the last slide.
You want me to read it
Um,
out, Tua?
yeah, go ahead.
All right. Discussion questions. Was the protectorate model a smart survival strategy or still a form of control?
I think that's pretty straightforward, right? It was a smart strategy. And
Yes.
it wasn't just Tonga who recognized that strategy. All of the other Polynesian and Pacific islands recognized, oh, geez, when
Yeah.
things get really tough, the protectorate strategy was like the last ditch effort to
Yeah.
try and fend off colonization. So I think that's pretty straightforward. I'll read the next one for you, Mr. Ateroa.
Oh,
Why did
I just
having
I just had
Oh,
a
go
thought,
ahead.
Tua.
Yeah.
Like those, and I think the foreign powers kind of knew when these islands were doing this last ditch efforts to seek protectorate status because they knew it was war coming after that because they were already having other foreign powers getting close, and when they didn't get the protectorate status from the other foreign powers, they knew that was going to cause some war. So I don't think a lot of the foreign powers, this is their game. They were not going to play that little game to kind of have each other fight each other because they probably thought there was enough pie to go around. It's just trying to see which islands they kind of their
The
preference
path of
was more
least resistance. Yeah.
EO, least resistance, maybe preferential wanting of harbors. That's what I'm thinking. But they knew there was enough islands to go around. They were not gonna spend so much resources on the other side of the world to try to fight another colonial power if that colonial power wanted that
Yeah.
specific island. That's my thoughts there.
And that's the thing. What the Polynesian islands provided, it wasn't huge resources of land or minerals or whatever. It was geographic location and positioning, right? Because they're all
Yep.
trying to find trade routes between the big markets, but you had to find good stopping points and geographic locations that were good stopping points in between the large markets.
Yep.
All right. Next one. Why did having a strong constitutional government help Tonga but not save places like Hawaii or Tahiti? Any thoughts on that, Mr.
Ah.
Atearoa?
Did Tahiti help me refresh? Did Tahiti have a constitution or anything, Tua? Oh,
Yes, yes,
really?
yes. They had a government, they
Okay.
had a constitution, they had a king and queens.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest difference. I'm assuming the Tahitians wrote their stuff in French or English. Their constitution is. I think that's the biggest difference. Hawaii and Tahiti's lack of probably just probably part of it is just probably being young. Those
Mhm.
islands are relatively young. They didn't have the necessary generation of experience of how to deal with foreign
The
powers.
little details that seem small but
Yes,
are very important.
and what Tonga did different because Tonga has the experience of how to run, you know, empires and entire Polynesian nation. Them knowing that they were dealing with non-Polynesian, the only ones to have written their constitution in Tongan, and I'm pretty sure the Tahitians and Hawaii. I know Hawaii for sure was English. Tahitians with either French or English their constitution, but they didn't have it in their native language to try to give you the upper hand in local affairs because you just gave if you have everything in the same playing field, you're gonna lose. And I've mentioned that before. Don't You're playing the Palangi, the white man's game, or the Europeans game in how to navigate laws and land with written documents. You're gonna lose that every time. But Tonga had the upper hand using their technology, writing, but writing it in a Tongan flavor of in the Tongan language to give the Tongan leaders and the people an upper hand on how to navigate. So I think that was the main difference to it's the language. Tonga's constitution written in Tongan, Hawaiian and Tahiti not written in their local languages gave them a disadvantage. I don't know if you had anything else. Tua.
Yeah, the only thing I think of is just the unity and the cohesiveness, right?
Okay.
The probably the reason why the Tahitians, Queen Pomare knew it wasn't going to last is probably because there was internal strife. Even Tonga faced that a little bit, but
Yeah.
we managed to maintain that cohesiveness, and especially through Queen Salote and marrying into the Tu'iha Takalaua line, saved
Save our
saved the
current monarchy.
monarchy and our
Save the monarchy.
and our freedom, our sovereignty,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So once again, we enter into the western playing field, but in order to survive, Tonga had to fall back on the traditional roles and responsibilities of the Tu'ikanukupolu and the Tu'ihatakalaua to survive to this day.
Yep. Next question. How did these different historical paths shape modern Pacific identities and land rights? Tua?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the land rights are important. Some of our brothers and sisters have regained their land rights now when they gained their independence or were able to negotiate that a little bit with their colonizers. But I think the biggest part, which is why we're having this discussion, is the identities, right?
Yeah.
Identities are influenced through your experience, and it's hard to argue that anyone had a more authentic experience than someone who was able to have self governance for thousands of years, right?
Mm.
And that's what Tonga brings to the table that is unique. Is it a perfect identity? Did it preserve everything perfectly? No, but we believe that the core of it stays true to what has been true for thousands of years. And Tonga's identity has been overshadowed because of our sovereignty, because our colonized brothers and sisters were able to get their version of history into academia, into the media, even social media. But our belief here on the Polynesianized podcast, there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. We were glad everybody was able to share their pieces of their history from their perspective. But Tonga is now in a position to share what has been preserved for thousands of years.
Mm.
And it is a unique perspective, a unique identity not just of being the center, not just probably highly probable of being the origin of Polynesia, but bringing it that it is the one identity that has maintained sovereignty for thousands and thousands of years and it has not been broken. And that brings something very unique to the table that we want our brothers and sisters to now hear, consider, and adopt what makes sense to you guys in regards to who we are as a people and what our history is as a civilization. That's kind of my thoughts there, Mr. Atero. Anything you want to
Yeah,
add?
yeah, yeah. No, there's some trickling like effects because of the different historical paths shape modern Pacific identities and land rights, right? These preserving your land from the Tongan perspective, that is your that has trickled down to what is happening in rugby league with the matematonga. Like to me, that's the perfect analogy. Why did it take a little we're a small population, but there's no Pacific island that was able to fill out a stadium that was not part of the big super countries. In Polynesia, we were the only ones to fill out with that when the World Cup happened with Taumalolo and Fifita choosing to
Yet we're the
play.
smallest.
We're the smallest, and we were able to fill out stadiums. That is, to me, that is the analogy of preserving the different paths, right? The different paths of preserving your your identity because it trickles down for how many generations removed your ancestors may have lived overseas or whatever. There's still that strong cultural identity is because Tonga has never lost its sovereignty. So it's much easier to pass that specific identity to the next generation to go as long as however it can go, right? So that's some of the different paths that Tonga was able to maintain, right? When you have the other Polynesian nations, you're dealing with many of them, you know, having history of saying you know they're let's just say if you're a Samoan, maybe their heritage was not as important as during your German heritage or British heritage. So when there's an event happening, you're kind of 50-50 if you're going to go and support or whatever. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say, that it took Tonga to kind of revitalize. This is what Tonga's impact to the Polynesian nation is, that remembering your heritage is important, and that you support and you give, like I said, man, no one does. I don't know many Polynesian nations for their high school alumni get together to have feast for a week for your high school alumni, and it's a whole week event for 100-year, celebration of your school. I've never, even when they have 50, we reach a 50-year mark. I don't
yeah.
know many Polynesian nations that do that, even in
Or
Samoa
or
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 in
raise
Fiji
or raise $1 million in one night.
one night. No, I'm serious. Like the amount of sacrifice that these people, and the reason why people always think like, man, why do Tongans always go all out? Is like, dude, it's their identity. They talk about this and that, with the finances, but I mean, I'm not gonna talk about that because that's a family's individual choice. But to me, the reason why people do that is their identity that hasn't been unbroken, that they able to practice those things. Because you don't see it in our other Polynesian cousins. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. It's because of that interruption that's happened with the colonization, and that's the difference in many of our upbringing, you know, with our fellow Polynesian brothers and sisters. But to me, that's the analogy I can put of the different paths that's happened with the Pacific identities and land rights. And that goes with land. Your land is your identity here on this earth. I always stress your spiritual identity is most important, but the next thing after your spiritual identity, if you have no land, you pretty much have no identity. It's the reason why the West struggles with the whole, people leaving their farmlands and staying in big cities because, and then they can't pay their mortgage or whatever, they lose identity, end up homeless because there's no there's no identity there, and they just stay in this cycle. So that's what the West is struggling with, and Pacific is the same thing, and they have family lands. If your land is your identity, if you have no land, you are the same description of what Dupo the first mentioned in his tour in Australia. So the land is, it trickles down to your identity. That's all races, I would say.
100%. All right. Last question. Are there echoes of these dynamics in today's Pacific relationship with larger powers?
Ooh, are there echoes of these dynamics in today's Pacific relationships with larger powers? Ooh, I would say yes right now, right? The big
Hmm.
topic that many Pacific nations are dealing with is the
China?
superpower of, yes, the superpower of America, and China is a emerging, trying to get to that superpower status, and China has been doing a lot and navigating that tender line to don't pick a side and to feel like you're giving up too much of your let's just say your sovereignty is a very delicate line to walk on. So um, I think that's what's going on for all Polynesian nations, because finances, and see, and this is the thing, right? Tonga is one of the blessed places that you can have land and not pay any land tax, but that's still your land, right? And that's a big, well, everyone, if you live in the West, everyone pays land tax or land rates here in New Zealand and property taxes in America. That's what helps fund a lot of these things. You don't pay that, you lose your land. You lose your
Hmm.
land. But in Tonga, it's not, because, like I mentioned before, the land is your identity. So I feel like you know that's part of the reason why, probably, I don't mind us not having resources like that, because that freedom of not have to pay taxes every year for land rates and property tax, dude, that's a blessing.
That's a
So
resource of its own.
that's a resource of its own. But at the same time, there's, you don't want to be left behind in the in the world on trying to catch up with technology and stuff, and Tonga's navigating in our own way, but trying to balance the the powers of China and more of probably the West as a whole, and just trying to stay independent from picking a side. That's what it seems like it's happening. I don't know.
Hmm.
You probably have more in depth on
No.
that. Well, what are your
The,
thoughts?
the the only thing I would add to that, because I agree 100%, this still exists today, right? The superpowers are still trying to find
Yeah,
strategic. The reason why they're interested in the Pacific and Polynesia is not because we have these crazy resources. It's
location.
strategic
Mm,
geographic advantages.
mm,
That's what it's looking for, right? And currently, it's vote in the United Nations. Tonga, I think the Samoa have a vote in the UN,
yep.
in the United Nations. So even though we're super small, but we have a little vote in the United Nations. That those are little political moves. So those still exist. The one that I really want to kind of highlight before we go to closing thoughts, real quick, is there is an invasion of ideas, and these ideas, these woke ideas, these very Western ideas that can can change what we have in Polynesia, um, is like we talked about. Democracy can be a threat to the
Mm,
land and to the identity of Polynesians. We have to be very careful. We don't just turn around, copy and paste what the West has done. We're not the West.
yeah.
We are a very specific group of islands in the Pacific who have a very specific culture, a very specific history, a very specific identity
Heritage.
and
Yes.
heritage that kind of makes us a cohesive unit to an extent. Even though we're individual nations, we just have to be very thoughtful that these ideas don't just come in and make us change the way we think, the way we behave, to the extent that it makes us at risk of losing who we are.
Mm,
Prime example, pure democracy, right? Remember, once you become pure democracy, any foreigner who comes in has the same vote and privileges as you are. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying be wary that when you do that, it's only a matter of time before your indigenous influence and valid claims to the islands no longer matter,
yeah.
right? And if you want to preserve that, you have to be very thoughtful, and that's a unique thing outside of the superpowers that are attacking us, so to say. Mr. Atero, closing thoughts for the evening.
Simple and short. Appreciate everyone, your support and viewership. Also, special shout out to a lot of our followers that are always defending our little short clips on the comments and stuff. Always appreciate you guys, and also new viewers and new followers. Appreciate you guys consuming the content. Hopefully, if you find some um, value in it, and appreciate it, Tua, your time. And yeah, that's it from Mr. Aotearoa, from Aotearoa.
Malo, Masi, Mr. Atearoa, as always, like you, Masi, we do this for the love of the game. We will do this as long as we enjoy it and as long as we think it provides value, not just to us, but more importantly to all of our viewers. Want to say thank you for everyone and say every like, every share, every comment. It goes a very, very long way, and we greatly appreciate it. Cannot say enough to our paying members. That's
Mm,
another great way. If you want to contribute, I think it's like $5 a month for one membership and then 10 or $15 for another membership. Another great way to contribute, and throw a digital kava bag in the comments. Um, really appreciate our brothers and sisters in Samoa. Believe it or not, we love you guys. We are Samoan. We love our brothers and sisters in Fiji. We are
yes.
Fijian. And as always, we believe we are one people. And if we come across as trying to put anyone else down in Polynesia, we're not. But we are very staunch in saying we have a very specific position. We have a very specific idea of what history looks like, and we
Mm,
stand firm on it. We declare it with confidence, and also recognizing there's a lot to be learned, a lot of things we can probably improve in our knowledge, and we invite anyone who's willing to come on and have a conversation with us, always willing to do so. Like we end every episode, we say be bold, don't be afraid to ask hard questions, but always, always stay curious. Till next time, peace.